call to order. Madam Clerk, roll call, please.
Councilors Kadim,
Here.
Dion,
Here.
Kilby,
Council Kilby, just unmute yourself, please.
Here.
Lullaby LeBeau,
Here.
Lee,
Here.
Peckham,
Here.
Pelletier,
Yeah.
Pereira,
Here.
and President Ponti.
Here, pursuant to the open meeting law, any person may make an audio or video recording of this public meeting or may transmit the meeting through any medium. Attendees are therefore advised that such recordings or transmissions are being made, whether perceived or unperceived by those present, and are deemed acknowledged and permissible. This floor of a city council public hearing is being held through remote participation due to the global pandemic that we are currently in the middle of. We've made the decision to do it on a case-by-case basis. As the cases go down, we'll make a decision on when we will be returning to our council chamber. As a result of that, all communications, whether it's citizens input or not, need to be sent to our city clerk at city_clerk@4ma.org. That needs to be in their email box by 3 p.m. the day of the meeting. First item on our agenda this evening is a public hearing for curb removals. Cumberland Farms, 165 Flanders Road in Westboro, Mass. For the removal of curbing as follows. Is there a motion to open?
Motion to open, Mr. President.
Second.
Motion to open the public hearing has been made by Councilor Kilby, seconded by Councilor Peckham. Roll call on opening the hearing.
Councilors Kadim,
Yes.
Dion,
Yes.
Kilby,
Yes.
Lullaby LeBeau,
Yes.
Lee,
Yes.
Peckham,
Yes.
Pelletier,
Yes.
Pereira,
Yes.
and President Ponti.
Yes, Cumberland Farms, Inc., 165 Flanders Road, Westboro, Mass. For the removal of curbing as follows. The curb removals will result in a one-way in or one-way out opening on Brayton Avenue and two-way opening on Stevens Street. The requested curb removals would allow for improved access to the property, which is commercially developed. Although there are currently no sidewalks along Stevens Street, the site plan shows that there will be concrete sidewalks along the Stevens Street property line. Is there, Madam Clerk, any written proponents or opponents?
None, Mr. President.
Hearing none, is there a motion to close the hearing?
Motion to close.
Motion to close has been made by Councilor Peckham,
Second.
seconded by Councilor Pelletier. On closing, roll call, Madam Clerk.
Councilors Kadim,
Yes.
Dion,
Yes.
Kilby,
Yes.
Lullaby LeBeau,
Yes.
Lee,
Yes.
Peckham,
Yes.
Pelletier,
Yes.
Pereira,
Yes.
President Ponti.
Yes. Item number 2 is BCBBL LLC, 465 Rock Street, for the removal of curbing as follows. Is there a motion to open the public hearing?
Motion to open.
Motion to open the hearing has been made by Councilor Peckham, seconded by
Second.
Second.
Councilor Pelletier. Roll call on opening the hearing.
Councilors Kadim,
Yes.
Dion,
Yes.
Kilby,
Yes.
Lullaby LeBeau,
Yes.
Lee,
Yes.
Peckham,
Yes.
Pelletier,
Yes.
Pereira,
Yes.
and President Ponti.
Yes. BCBBL LLC of 465 Rock Street for the removal of curbing as follows. The existing curb removals on Duval Street, which is a one-way, will be replaced with a single curb cut to accommodate the new use of the property. This is to be exit only. Right turn onto Duval Street, no entrance proposed on Duval Street. A curb removal on Turner Street will be replaced and both used as an entrance and an exit. This request would allow for the improved access to the property, which is to be commercially developed. The proposed curb removals will be substantially less than the existing condition. Your motion to open has already been granted. Madam Clerk, any written proponents or opponents?
No, Mr. President.
Hearing none, is there a motion to close?
Motion to close.
Motion to close has been made by Councilor Peckham,
Second.
seconded by Councilor Dion. Roll call on closing.
Councilors Kadim,
Yes.
Dion,
Yes.
Kilby,
Yes.
Lullaby LeBeau,
Yes.
Lee,
Yes.
Peckham,
Yes.
Pelletier,
Yes.
Pereira,
Yes.
and President Ponti.
Yes. Item number 3, Daniel Walsh, 9 Riverview Street, for the removal of curbing as follows. Is there a motion to open?
Motion open.
Open has been made by Councilor Kilby, seconded by Councilor Peckham. Roll call on opening.
And Councilors Kadim,
Yes.
Dion,
Yes.
Kilby,
Yes.
Lullaby LeBeau,
Yes.
Lee,
Yes.
Peckham,
Yes.
Pelletier,
Yes.
Pereira,
Yes.
and President Ponti.
Yes. Daniel Walsh, 9 Riverview Street, for the removal of curbing as follows. The petitioner is requesting the removal of 19 feet of curbing to the existing 16-foot, 5-inch driveway opening to allow for additional access. The proposed work improves access to the property and does not cause a significant adverse effect to on-street parking. Is there a motion? Madam Clerk, is there any written proponents or opponents?
No, Mr. President.
Hearing none, is there a motion to close? the hearing?
Motion to close.
Motion to close this and all public hearings would be appropriate, has been made by Councilor Peckham,
Second.
seconded by Councilor Dion. Roll call.
On closing the hearings, Councilors Kadim,
Yes.
Dion,
Yes.
Kilby,
Yes.
Lullaby LeBeau,
Yes.
Lee,
Yes.
Peckham,
Yes.
Pelletier,
Yes.
Pereira,
Yes.
and President Ponti.
Yes, that will conclude our public hearings that have now all been adjourned. It is 6:04 p.m. The Fall River City Council Committee on Finance will now be called to order. Madam Clerk, roll call.
Councilors Kadim,
Here.
Dion.
Here.
Kilby,
Here.
Lullaby LeBeau.
Here.
Lee,
Here.
Peckham,
Here.
Pelletier.
Here.
Pereira,
Here.
President Ponti.
Here, pursuant to the open meeting law, any person may make an audio or video recording of this public meeting or may transmit the meeting through any medium. Attendees are therefore advised that such recordings or transmissions are being made, whether perceived or unperceived by those present, and are deemed acknowledged and permissible. This Fall River City Council Committee on Finance meeting is being held through remote participation due to the global pandemic of COVID-19. The purpose of this meeting is being held through remote participation only. Any such public input needs to be emailed to the city clerk's email by 3 p.m. the day of the meeting at city_council@fallriverma.org. Being as the first item on our agenda is citizens input. Madam Clerk, any written citizens input?
Yes, Mr. President. Honorable Council, in light of this tumultuous year we have witnessed, I feel a sense of duty to speak for our fellow citizens of this great city. We call upon our city council to remember our fellow residents and their families who are struggling during these trying times. In the new year, we seek to combat the 3 issues our residents have faced: economic disparity, social justice, and community infrastructure. These fundamental issues are crucial to an active and engaged community. With the arrival of a global pandemic, conditions have only worsened. Leadership in these times is so very crucial. We should all know the story of our city motto, "We'll try." In the face of the Great Fire of 1843, the citizens put up a sign among the smoke and destruction, the words, "We'll try." Humble, reverent, and compassionate, with the determination to approach the challenges of our burned city. We see such parallels today among the sick and hurting citizens of our city, with the citizens of Fall River during that great fire. We need the same leadership our aldermen had at that time as well. We still see that leadership in 1843 all around us today in our mills and rich local history known around the world. With an active and engaged citizenry facilitated by our local city leadership, we can achieve our promise of giving our citizens the opportunity to succeed. Remember to execute your duties faithfully and without bias, as the men and women have done so before you. In these hard times, "We'll try" means so much to the residents of this wonderful city, a harrowing echo from our past. New and effective ways to promote civic engagement, legislative transparency, and economic development are great building blocks in the vitality of Fall River. We implore the council to take these issues to heart and to mind, and to remember the constituents you were elected to serve. This body of 9 serves at a great time of distress for our city. With faith and determination, we give well wishes and hope for success to the council during the rest of the year ahead. Our citizenry counts on you immensely. I close with a quote: "The spirit of the people is the fabric of Fall River," and it certainly is. With humble regard, Ryan Kennedy, William Street in Fall River. Second one we have. Good afternoon, Council President and members of the City Council. I wish to shed some light on the abhorrent disgrace of a city charter that we have. I believe this charter is a disgrace to the community. The worst part of this charter is the citizens' participation mechanisms. For a mere citizen to put together a binding petition to go before the voters, that person needs to structure together a notarized affidavit along with 250 signatures with rules and regulations on where they can be collected. And if and when the City Council denies that petition, then the petitioners need to gain the signatures of over 5,000 city registered voters just to go on the ballot. I believe this was cynically placed in the charter by the Charter Committee to discourage citizen participation. The charter allows for elected officials to be recalled and reelected on the same ballot. The charter language that is legally inadequate. The City Council has powers granted by the state to amend the charter whenever it pleases. And if and when I'm on the City Council, I would utilize that power by submitting home rule petitions to amend the gray areas of this charter and send this charter back to Charmin where it belongs. I also wish to discuss today ways the city can save money. I believe we should amend ordinances to remove salary for all boards and commissions. I cannot understand why we have voluntary boards and boards who barely meet and do nothing but violate the open meeting law, such as the Sewer Commission earns a salary. We should remove salaries for zoning board and sewer commission, board of assessors, and finally, the City Council. We could save the city of Fall River over $144,000 per year. We could staff a policeman or a firefighter or waste it on health insurance. I hope the City Council takes steps to amend our charter to provide more citizen participation and work to provide more revenue to our city residents. Thank you very much for your time. Respectfully submitted, Colin Dias. And lastly, I don't know what it takes for y'all to comply with the open meeting law. The minutes to be accepted tonight do not properly reflect the roll call votes that are required when a remote meeting is taking place. Thanks, Patrick Higgins.
Thank you very much. That will conclude our citizens' input before us tonight. Next item is a discussion regarding the authorization of the dismissal of the Fall River City Council versus Jazel F. Correa II in Bristol County Court, number 1973CV00885. This is for discussion purposes only in finance. We're welcoming back to the City Council meeting Attorney Lauren Goldberg, who represented the City Council when we took the former mayor to court when we were dealing with that last year. Attorney Goldberg, welcome back to the Fall River City Council meeting. If you could just please, before we entertain any discussion on this, kind of give us a quick highlight on where we are, the purpose of this, the formatics about it, and if councilors have any questions for you, since you did represent the council on this matter, we'll entertain questions. Attorney Goldberg, welcome.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm glad to be here. The reason for my appearance tonight is to discuss, as you said, the status of the case involving the former mayor, where the council voted to pursue litigation with the intent of having the mayor be declared essentially unable to act due to his legal entanglements at the time, and the concern that his attention would be focused appropriately somewhere else. At the time, I explained to the council that the charter in Fall River has very special language, and so we talked about what the risks and benefits might be of pursuing this in a court of law. And while we all recognize that injunctions are always difficult, especially when you're bringing an injunction or seeking to bring an injunction against a public official, but particularly in this case where the language in the charter was supportive of the council's position, it seemed to the council, to paraphrase, that it was a risk worth taking. We did submit written materials. We also argued extensively in court And, you know, I know some of you were there at that time. We also helped the council with a press release, and there was a press release when the materials were filed, and there was also a press release when the decision was issued. As you may recall, there was an interest to act quickly due to ongoing legal issues at that time. And so one of the things that we had tried to stress is that the council needed a decision as soon as possible. So, you know, whether that the judge decided that the as soon as possible part of this question was too big of a burden to carry or not, the decision essentially found against the council and in favor of the mayor. Now, this finding, however, was, I mean, and at the time I suggested that it might be worth it to appeal depending on the timeline. And I think the consideration was really cut short by what transpired immediately after that as a factual matter, which was within the week, the former mayor had indicated that he would be on leave, and the council president became the acting mayor for a time. So the decision, in my opinion, was appropriate, that there was no further need to pursue the litigation at that time since the city had gotten what it wanted. And, you know, I like to think that it's in large part because we on behalf of the council made such good arguments about the situation. In the end, since that time, the matter has been sitting, and many cases do sit for some time. However, there are discovery deadlines and motion deadlines, and none of that seemed to me to be appropriate under the circumstances where the issue has passed that was of concern. And I would mention further that one of the things, one of the potential remedies that the council has is to take a look at that language in the charter and directly address the judge's comments. And so there are mechanisms to approach this that don't involve a court action. And so, while certainly we are here to do the council's bidding on this, it appears that the likely the most appropriate course, considering finances and considering other options available, would be to go ahead and dismiss the lawsuit. Essentially, that just means neither party will take any further action on the lawsuit, and it's done by agreement. So it's by agreement with the council for the former mayor and this council. And if that's the case, we file that, and the case is no longer pending. Also, just bear in mind that if this issue were to recur, it would likely be something that a judge would look at. So if the council is concerned about the future, my recommendation would be that we take a good look at the decision and address it through through a charter amendment. I'm happy to answer any questions, Mr. President, through you.
Thank you very much. And just for the record, Attorney Goldberg is with KP Law, and she did represent the prior council in that litigation. Just more of a comment for me. I know Attorney Councilor Kilby has a question, but before I entertain him, I just want to say that I know there's some new members of this council who weren't there before when we were in executive session with you, and you were giving the council the advice. I just want to tell you, from my standpoint, and I'm sure our council vice president could speak to that as well, your communication, your ability to communicate with the council and offer us sound, professional legal advice was noted. You sat that prior council down in executive session, and you told us both sides of the argument. You didn't come in to tell us that, this is a slam dunk, this is going to be where it's at. You gave the council in executive session professional, honest legal advice. And as council president at that time, I just want you to know how much I appreciate that. I've never really been able to thank you publicly for that. But your professionalism, your preparedness, and everything that you did to prepare us for that litigation under really challenging times as a community. I want to just personally and publicly thank you for that.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you.
President.
Thank you. Attorney, Councilor Kilby.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. I would just like to echo your comments. I was there during the executive session, and as an attorney practicing over 25 years in this city locally, I think Attorney Goldberg, as you said, gave us our options. She went over the pros and cons. She informed us on the alternatives and what risks were involved. And the city council at the time, and I can talk about this because now the case is going to be over soon. She, for lack of a better phrase, she just went over our options with us. And we were going through a tough time with that former mayor. I mean, I think the community was in chaos. We had so many tough decisions to make. I think it was the first time in many, many years that the city council went into executive session. So we made a firm choice to be bold and say, hey, the current mayor is not fit. And I think it came out resoundingly that we were on the right side, maybe not so much civilly with an injunction, because it's kind of like Goldberg said, that's a tough argument to make. And usually the judge, one of the first ingredients of that is irreparable harm. And the judge found it would not be irreparable harm, I believe, that if he took action. So in any event, I mean, I don't want to jump on his misery. However, he's facing a big penalty here, and I think we have to move on as a city. And I'm looking forward to just putting this stuff behind us. So I appreciate the comments that you made, and I'll yield there.
Thank you. Any questions?
Thank you, Attorney Goldberg. I appreciate your work.
Thank you. Thank you, Councilor Kilby. Councilor Pereira.
The only question I have would be to Attorney Goldberg. What is the purpose of an appeal? What would the appeal get us? I mean,
Nowhere.
at this point, we wanted, or the council then wanted the mayor to step down. And he's stepped down. I don't know what else he's stepped into, but I'm sure he's going to be dealing with his own issues come May 1st. But there is no purpose to appealing it if the issue was to have him step down. He's been voted out. He's out. So is there a reason for an appeal?
Mr. President?
Absolutely, Attorney Goldberg.
Thank you. Essentially, the discussion about whether to appeal was limited in time because it was an interlocutory order. The time for us to look at it for immediate purposes, as you said, was at that time. And so I think because the result was practically the same, although it for legal purposes, it was different. But because the practical purpose was the same, the council chose not to pursue an appeal. At this point, the only reason to go forward would be to try and convince a judge that the Superior Court judge who made this decision was wrong, and that the city was right. And while
Mr. President, it would be an abuse of discretion standard, which is almost impossible to achieve.
Councilor. Yeah, thank you.
That's exactly, thank you, Councilor Kilby. That's exactly where I was going. And it's harder to do. So that's why I do think that if this council is concerned about that situation, which I know everyone was concerned about, but if they're concerned that it could ever happen again, there is some language changes that could be made in the charter that would clarify how it's, I think it's clear what it says, but it would clarify that issue. So no future judge would look at it and say, well, what the past judge said still stands. I'm going to view that as precedent. So I don't see, and that's why I'm here in open session tonight. There does not seem to be anything to gain from pursuing the case further at this time.
Well, I would agree. I mean, I don't see that there's any reason to appeal it. If we were going to appeal it, it would have been appealed right then and there. Instead, we had a mayor who knew that the writing was on the wall, who knew that things were difficult and chose to take a leave of absence, which I quite frankly had issue with because we still continue to pay him. And I don't think he should have gotten paid. He should have resigned, but he didn't. He took a leave of absence. But, he will be facing court again, and let the legal system do what they have to do. Us, at this point, appealing it makes no sense. But thank you so much. I yield, Mr. President.
Thank you, Councilor Ferrara. Any further questions for Attorney Goldberg? Hearing none, hearing no further questions. Once again, Attorney Goldberg from KP Law, thank you for your help, your guidance, and everything you've done for this council so far, and your leadership on this matter. And if there's no further questions, we'll go to our next item. And Attorney Goldberg, thank you for joining us this evening.
Thank you, Mr. President. I appreciate the opportunity to catch everyone up and to tell you about the next steps. So thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, that will do it for Attorney Goldberg. Next item on our agenda is a discussion regarding the FY 2021 Q2 budget report. At this time, we're going to bring in Mrs. Sahadi so that we can entertain some questions. Just give us 1 second. And she's here. Hello, Mrs. Sahadi, can you hear me okay? Mrs. Sahadi, can you hear me okay? I don't think she can. All right, we're going to remove her and have her come back in. We're just going to give it a moment because we need Mrs. Sahadi for this part of our meeting. So we're going to do a 2-minute recess at this time. 2-minute recess. All right, this Fall River City Council meeting, this Fall River City Council Committee on Finance is now back in session. With some technical issues, we're back. The next item on our agenda is a discussion with the fiscal year 2021 Q2 budget report. Mrs. Sahadi, brief overview, please.
Yeah, certainly, Council President. So you all have in your packet, and I made available a hard copy of the Q2 budget report. Just a few highlights. The revenue is showing 47.2% of total revenue collected over the budget, which is very consistent with the prior year. As you know, the tax bills go out at the end of December for the third and the fourth quarter, and that is where you're going to recognize the increase, the 1.5 increase that was passed on the tax recap. Motor vehicles consistently are low at this particular point. The largest commitment, as I've discussed in prior years, goes out in February each year. And so 15.8% is consistent as well with the prior years. The marijuana recreational, interesting enough, after looking at it, Northeast actually included 5 months worth of activity at an average of $106,000 a year. And Hope Health, which Sunnyside has 3 months worth of activity in here for $42,000. Just so you know, since this report was printed and this UNIS was run as of 12/31, we have actually received the 6 month of Northeast and another month from Sunnyside. So although when you're looking at it, the percentage is 39.2%. When you adjust it for the receivables, we're actually at 54.7%. So we're right where we need to be. That is also true with the marijuana excise. That's a timing issue. Would equal the same amount, but that is the money that comes from DOR, similar to the meals tax. Right now in miscellaneous non-recurring, that's 18.6%. What is in there primarily is the sale of surplus property that Tammy has been working on. City clerk revenue is down, not much, but it's down a little bit, slightly over the last year in the areas of birth, death, and marriage certificates. The police department, it's federal revenue. It's also due to timing And the fire department in particular, that is the money that we receive, the shared money on that grant that we received, but it's about $750,000 and we won't expect it until June of 2021. We receive it in June of each year. On the upside, building permits are way up. We're at 85.1% of the budget for building permits. So we're pleasantly happy with the results of that departmental revenue. But parking fines are low, 29.3%. In particular, Pearl Street is at 21.3. Pearl Street in particular is low because the courts have been closed. Other than that, the revenue is where it needs to be at approximately the 50% mark for the 6 months ended 12/31. As for the expenditures, the results are approximately the same. We're at, excluding school, we're at 52.1%. That's approximately where we were last year if you were to pick up your prior year Q2 report. Just a couple of highlights. The city council, your department, you've encumbered the $125,000 for the cost of the audit. We are happy to tell you that the audit is completed and it was included in the POS, the official statements for our bond offering, and they will be back probably in the month of February and March to do the single audit. We had them finish the regular audit earlier this year because we were selling another $54 million worth of bonds, and bond counsel thought it was important that we have audited financial statements included in the document. The mayor's office is showing spending 61%. The MMA dues, which are $15,000, are due in the month of July, and so there's the 61%. Same with the assessor's office, it's at 82%. But the majority of that is other professional services as it relates to real estate research consultants that we use during the recap process. The law department, for full transparency, we paid Gary an agreed upon fee of $10,000 to do some additional work to represent the city for transportation litigation. This $10,000 should be covered with CARES funding. MIS, right now you have a paid invoice, and I don't know if you have the revised version, but you had a paid invoice from Munis of $352,000. That is also due in the July timeframe. So that's showing 78% spent for the MIS department. Elections, again, 62.3 in salaries, but the election was in the second quarter. There's a couple of departments that have buyouts, environmental police, and a couple of others that weren't budgeted, but should not be an issue by June 30th. Same thing with animal control. They've encumbered the entire amount, so that looks like they're more spent than they would be at the 50% mark. Retirement is always a timing issue. We generally try to make the last payment for retirement in the month of January each year, and it in fact was made on the warrant last week. Debt service, same thing. The majority of the debt is due in February, so your percentage is not going to show 50% on a regular basis. Solid waste. We're made, let's see, around Republic invoices are approximately 250,000. There were only 5 invoices that had been processed. The 6th one was processed in the first week of January. So that is showing us at 48.1%. So that's a good sign. That's where we want to be with, certainly with solid waste. Veterans also had a buyout that wasn't budgeted. And then other than that, I think that's about it on the expenditure side. Oh, property insurance, that's due in November each year. So that too would look like it were not where it needs to be. Your enterprise funds, are included in your packet. Revenue for sewer is at 49.6%, so we're just about at the 50% mark. Expenditures are at 62, but 86% of it is as a result of the due dates on the debt. That is also true, or exactly true, if you were to look at water. Water's a little bit over the 50% mark, but the debt service on the expenditure side is at 77%. And both salaries and expenses are both under the 50% mark. EMS, at the time this was run, revenue was at 43%. That too is part of the timing issues. And expenditures were at 54.7%, but it's particularly as it relates to capital and some expenses that are over. Some of those expenses too, by the way, will be reclassified to COVID expenses as we continue through the process of including anything that is CARES and or COVID related in the reimbursement request of our CARES $7.9 million. The next tab is the Employer Trust Fund. And the Employer Trust Fund right now, being extremely conservative and working together with the school department to put together the projections and the estimates. It looks like we will be finishing the year with a significant surplus. And that too is because, as you all know, and I think Council Kadim talked about this a little bit during the briefings, you know, right now, there is still a period of time where people in general are just not using their doctors. They're not going for services that they would normally get. And certainly the elective surgeries are really lower than they have been for years during the first 6 months out of the year.
All right, thank you, Mr. Hadi. But I'm sorry, you still going?
Just a couple things. I don't really have anything to say on the capital projects. They pretty much speak for themselves. So if anyone has any particular questions, they certainly can ask. And I know, Council President, you always tend to be interested in, and I understand why, certainly, in the inactive funds, and the two larger ones in particular belong to the Water and Sewer Department. And I have spoken to Paul Ferland about utilizing these funds for projects that he could utilize them for in the upcoming year. The remaining of the others are pretty much park projects that are going to be utilized for upcoming park projects as well.
Question.
Thank you. A number of councilors signed up to speak on this. First councilor is Councilor Dion. Is that
Hi,
you?
thank you. Thank you very much. Can you, can you repeat again about Northeast Alternatives? What did you say about the 1 year in terms of money, in terms of the 3%?
Yeah, so this is a cash basis report. So we don't adjust this report on a regular basis for any receivables that are due to us on a monthly basis. We only adjust our reports on an annual basis. So June 30, we book any receivables. So when I went back and looked, the percentage was under the 50%. So I was curious myself as to why. And so when I counted up the payments we've received so far, Northeast, we had received 5, although we've gotten the 6th one at the beginning of January. It was not in here. And for Sunnyside, we had actually only received 3 of them at that point in time, but we've received 2 more now.
Okay, so at this point, the amount that they've paid to the city brings them to what percentage based on your projections?
So if I use the amount that we've received and the average amount that we expect to receive for a given month, we would be at about 54.7%. So it'd be over the 50%.
And when this budget was put together, were there estimates and projections for Sunnyside, and what's the status with that as to where their payments are?
Yes, there were. So we did include Sunnyside in our estimates back in February, but if you remember, they got closed down almost immediately after they gave me the estimates for the remaining of the year. They're close to meeting their estimates. I do keep a spreadsheet on a monthly basis comparing the two to what we budgeted for the two. So they're both pretty much, well, if we're at 54.7%, they're both pretty much where they expected to be at this point during the year.
So pretty much it's safe to say the only thing COVID hasn't affected is recreational use of marijuana.
Well, it's certainly one of the things it hasn't affected.
Okay, now on Medicaid reimbursement, we're at 18.8%. Is that typical at this point?
It is. Actually, our largest cash receipt for that normally comes in June as well.
Okay, very good. Let's see. I want to jump to page 7, traffic and parking revenue.
Mhm.
I know that when this budget was set up, we hadn't voted on increasing parking meter fees, etc.
Mhm.
That has happened since. So I'm anticipating, and I know we're not talking about it yet, but in our third quarter budget, we should be seeing above the projected amount because of those increases. Is that fair to say? I mean, I
Yeah.
realize that this is probably a little under. Normally, we look at approximately $300,000 annually for parking meter receipts, and the projection was 50,000 under that. But do you anticipate that may be offset in the next 6 months because of it?
I can't really answer that question fairly because quite frankly, looking at where we're at right now at 29.3% or just at $73,000 worth of cash receipts, I'm not seeing the parking meter receipts increasing unless there's a big change with the vaccines and people being able to go out and park and use the meters. People are just not out. And so if they're not out, they're not parking their car. I mean, even the court systems haven't really been open. And so the meters that are around the courthouses aren't even being utilized. So I'm thinking that's going to be a shortfall at the end of the year.
But do you think it's fair to say that there might be a bit of an offset where it did go from the 25 cents to 50 cents? I mean, that
Well,
might
definitely.
be,
I
that
mean,
might
they
be somewhat
definitely
of a
should
saving.
be. Right.
Yeah, that might be
there
somewhat
should
of
be
a
an
saving
increase.
grace.
Right. So if you take your 73 and you say, okay, I'm going to double it. I'm only at 140, but you did increase it. So we might get up to 200.
Yep. Okay. Now I have another question. The meter occupancy permits. Again, I know that we, with the courts closed, etc., that hasn't been very lucrative. We didn't look at that when we were doing increases, did we?
I don't believe so, no. And I don't know right tonight. I can't answer you what that permit fee is. I don't believe Mrs. Ferreira looked into increasing that particular fee, but we certainly could.
Yeah, because I don't know. I could be incorrect, but I'm assuming that to be like when the news stations were taking up X number of parking spaces.
That's what it's for. Yep.
That's what
That's
it's
exactly
for.
what it's for. Mhm.
Yeah, so I'm very curious as to, I don't know how we let that slip, why we would not have visited that when we were doing the increases. And perhaps maybe we should put that
certainly
on the
ask
doc.
Laura. Mhm.
Yeah, and perhaps we can look at that. I think we certainly should, because really in reality, they paid peanuts for the amount of time they occupied those spaces. So I think we definitely should visit that. And then I think for now, my last question would be in expenses, which I did ask for the printout in vendors for the law department for outsourcing. I know that we don't have specifically what each outsourced item was for, but I guess at this point, my question is, would it be more efficient and more cost effective to hire somebody to do this in-house would there be more productivity? I'm not sure how to phrase my question. You know, if we're spending 50,000 on outsourcing for things that could be done in-house for 40,000, just as an example, you're getting more bang for your buck, you're getting more productivity, and you're having somebody on a full-time basis that can address these issues. So I guess what I'm looking at, is there a balance? Can we look at, you know, item by item, what we could have done in another manner that would have been more cost efficient and more productive?
Certainly. So that probably is something you should speak to Alan Rumsley for. But to answer your question, I mean, some of it is specific, right? So the first vendor on the list, that is for the litigation for Purchase Street. So whether or not we could have done that in-house, that's really a question for Alan. The second vendor, Clifford and Kenny, that is the negotiations for all of the unions. Generally speaking, that's not done in-house. You know, could it be, whether we had a specialist that was, you know, a union negotiator, we potentially could do that, but that is not normally done in-house. The third, Con Kavanaugh, that's an arbitrator that we hired. Then you have Ms. Howiak, that she does the housing. KP Law was the Comcast contract. And then Lee and Associates were stenographic people on the Mr. NATO case. And then Matt Thomas does a little bit of work for the law department from time to time because of his municipal background. The Thompson and West was a misposting, and I've since corrected that for the law department. That should have gone to subscriptions.
That's, you know, in general practice, again, you know, people know I try to get the biggest bang for the buck, and also to assist the law. I mean, you can't get around what you need to legally do. And I'm sure, and I just feel like we also could alleviate some of the backlog and an addition in that department. So again, it becomes, you know, a matter of equity and productivity, and just try to enhance it and make it better is what I hope we can do. So,
Well, as you know, we have had over the years an additional attorney in that office. That position was removed from the budget when Jessica left us. But, you know, certainly I have to agree with you, based on the size of our city, that department really could use some additional staffing.
okay, that's all I have right now. With that, I yield. Thank you.
Thank you. Just to, before I acknowledge Councilor Lee and then Councilor Pereira, Mrs. Hardy, did you say, while we're on the legal aspect of things, that the city paid attorney Gary Howiak $10,000 for bus transportation?
Yes. So,
Yeah.
well, the mayor, obviously the Allen and the mayor, Gary was part-time, and the law department needed some help with the litigation on the bus, not the bus contracts themselves, but the litigation over not paying them in the prior year. And a decision was made that Gary would be certainly willing and able to perform those services. And because he is an employee, he cannot be paid as a vendor and an employee at the same time. So he was being paid additional monies to perform services beyond those services that he performs on a regular basis.
All right, so I'm having a tough time with that. I'll let my colleagues speak a little bit more about it, but I don't understand why we would pay an additional $10,000 to an assistant corporation counsel who is on the city clock, and it has nothing to do with Attorney Howie. I think quite highly of him. I want to just make that abundantly clear, but why would we pay an additional $10,000 in outside legal when he is in City Hall, whether it's part-time or whatnot? He's getting paid, you know, higher than some department heads do in some cases. I guess we can speak to Attorney Rumsey and the mayor about what went into that process, because I'm having a tough time wrapping my head around the fact that we have him, he's part-time, he's assistant corporation counsel, and we gave him another $10,000 to perform work that he could be doing on his time with the city and the law department.
Well, I think basically, and again, you need to speak to Attorney Rumsley, but he couldn't, there's not enough time for him to do it during the day on his regular schedule as a part-time employee for the city. The alternative was to hire another attorney, which actually Mr. Howiak was at first thinking that was going to be the better way to go. Go outside, hire an attorney, and have them work on this litigation. So, whether it be a KP Law or, another attorney that was willing to work on this as outside professional services, the question then would be, could we utilize Gary's expertise and have him do it, but give him, and I hate to use the word stipend, but give him additional salary for services that he would be doing beyond his part-time employment with the city.
All right, I'm gonna allow my colleague to speak, but I'm gonna be quite candid. And with all due respect, Mrs. Hadi, I'm not buying that. We're in trying financial times. We don't know what next year's budget's gonna look like. We have our collective bargaining units that haven't been handled. They're going to arbitration. We don't have a full financial picture about if we're gonna go to the debt exclusion, what year we're gonna go to the debt exclusion. I mean, we have to draw the line. And quite honestly, I'm very disappointed to hear in the presentation tonight that we have an assistant corporation counsel who is paid $80,000 a year as an assistant corporation counsel, that we had to give him another $10,000 on something that he could do within his job duties. I am very disappointed to hear that. And I will be having a conversation with the mayor and Attorney Rumsey tomorrow about this, because it's absolutely unnecessary to do. And these are the kind of spends that at the end of the day end up adding up quite heavily at the end of the fiscal year when we have these continued expenses and we don't rein it in. And these are the kind of expenses that add up to a couple $100,000 at the end of the year. So I'm just going to vocalize my extreme displeasure with the fact that that happened. And I will have a conversation with the mayor and corporation counsel about it tomorrow, but it's totally unnecessary to be done. He's there on a regular basis, part-time, full-time or not. Maybe we have to have a conversation about taking that position and making it an actual full-time position instead of a part-time position. Maybe those are the conversations we need to start having now. So I'm very disheartened to hear that. Councilor Lee.
I'm sorry. Certainly, I hear what you say, Council President, and we certainly need to talk about the personnel and the need of personnel in that particular department. But I just want to reiterate that this $10,000 that was provided to Mr. Howiak, Attorney Howiak, will not affect the budget. And I understand what you're saying, but I just want to make sure that we're all clear that this is a CARES-related expenditure.
I get that. I know it's not coming out of our budget, but we could use, let me ask you this. What are you labeling that as? What are you labeling that as a expense for CARES? Because it's a transportation-related expense?
Right. It's being litigated. Or we're being sued because we didn't pay the transportation during the period of the pandemic from March to June 30th.
Okay. Well, I'm sure we could have found other ways to spend that money. Councilor Lee.
Hi, Mr. Hyde, how you doing?
Good.
Okay. I had this question when we met prior to the meeting, but I did want to present it in front of our council and to whoever who is out there listening regarding the resolution that we put together earlier a few months ago about looking for relief for restaurants and businesses that are that are struggling during this COVID time. And how that process went. We were seeking a percentage of a discount for renewal fees for liquor licenses. That a lot of people didn't understand that process. They thought that we as a council body had the power, but really this was presented to the administration, and then it was actually brought towards the licensing board. Correct?
That's correct.
And then from there, what was the result of that?
So right now, where we're at is, now you have to take into consideration that we're talking about a number of individuals. I think there's 3 pages worth of whether they're restaurants, all liquor, restaurants, beer and wine, seasonal beer and wine, farm, which is your 2 breweries. So we now have the amount calculated. We have all of the vendors, we have all of the individuals inputted into Munis as a vendor. And the accounts payable department is trying to break it down into small groups so that she can start refunding the 25%.
So it's going to be carried out. And if I recall correctly, there was a sentence or two in the resolution, I believe it came from Councilor Kadim, about transitioning money from the stabilization to sort of make up for that. But from what I understand, you're not going to need to do that, or there isn't a capability of doing that right now. And it's actually just going to come right from the general fund, correct?
Right now, it's coming out of the general fund. We're refunding it from the account that it was paid into. Councilor Kadim is correct. The possibility does exist. If we have shortfalls in particular areas, we can fund the budget with additional stabilization. As you know, the budget was passed with the $2 million. At this point, we have not transferred any of that $2 million into the operating budget because, the COVID is still continuing. We still have a pandemic. We have areas in the budget, transportation being one, that we will clearly see savings in fiscal year 21. As I indicated earlier, when I talked just quickly about the employer trust fund, we expect there to be surpluses there. Now, yes, we may have some shortfalls in some of the revenue accounts. We talked about traffic just about earlier, but I think it's too early to determine whether or not we would need to come to this council for a transfer for that 25%. So I'd like to be able to utilize it or absorb it in the 21 budget if I can, without having to ask for a transfer.
I know that we initiated the 25% discount for these businesses, but this initiation was based on COVID. So I'm curious if there's a pathway to utilize CARES funding to replace the funding that we are discounting right now as well.
Well, we're still waiting certainly on the president to take office tomorrow. And we're hopeful that he will provide some additional guidance or relief on the use of the money. But right now, lost revenue is not one of the areas that we can use. And this would be considered lost revenue.
I got you. My other question is regarding, I know you went over the salaries and what our expenditures were for outside counsel. Attorney Thomas is someone that on the real estate committee had a lot of interactions with. And I believe just recently we just finalized the old police station sale, correct?
That's correct. We actually have the deed transfer occurred, I think, last week sometime.
Okay, great. And the beginning of that renovation, is there a timeline on that?
Yes, I didn't bring it with me tonight, Councilor Lee. I can certainly look into it for you, but there is several timelines or areas that he's got to meet now before he can start construction, and then certain timelines that he's got to meet through construction.
Okay. And in regards to the budget itself, I've seen for the most part we're right on schedule. It's good. I mean, in a way, it's good to see the surplus from the insurance piece, but I know that that's not fully representative to the situation based on COVID and its dynamics. However, that was a big part of why we were able to have that budget come back to us, because we had those adjustments with the insurance. So I think as far as it looks from what I've seen, the whole thing through, we're on track to meet all the numbers. So with that, I yield. I'm good. Thank you for the information.
Thank you, Councilor. Thank you, Councilor Pereira.
Yeah, a couple of questions I had have been answered. One of the things I wanted to ask about was the CARES money. How much are we getting? Have we gotten any direction on where we can use it, that type of thing?
Yes, so $7.9 million is the amount that's been awarded to the city. We haven't gotten any new clarification as to what type of expenses it can be used on. They did extend the spending through December 31st of 21. So we do have a little bit more time to expend some of the dollars, the $7.9 million on CARES-related expenses.
Okay, and I wanted to ask also about Attorney Howiak. The $10,000 came from the law department because they had money in there?
It's actually being paid out of the CARES money.
Okay, but that being paid out of the CARES money doesn't add to his salary, so that.
Well, it
Yeah.
does. It does, because he can't be, an employee can't be an employee and a vendor. So we can't pay him like we would pay Clifford and Kenny or Renee, for that matter, or KP Law. Because he's an employee, we have to pay him as an employee.
So the $10,000 extra that he gets,
Mhm.
now his salary this year will be 90,000, which will add to his retirement when they calculate his retirement at the end of the year, at the end of his service with the city. And
That would be
choose-
correct. That would be
that
correct.
will also be included in there. And I know that we did receive something from Attorney Rumsey relative to stipends. Or I had talked to him about different stipends. I know that no one can get a stipend over 2,000 without it coming before the council. But I thought I read somewhere that stipends really weren't legal, that you should just pay the person for that position. So I realize that this isn't quote unquote a stipend, but
Right.
out of the CARES Act, we're gonna take money out of that to throw into, extra for.
Well,
have you?
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. We would have taken it out of CARES money
Right.
to pay a vendor. So if we were paying KP Law, we would have taken it from CARES money
Right,
because it's an eligible cost.
but a vendor doesn't get retirement and Blue Cross and Blue Shield and all that other stuff. They're a vendor, they get money just for their services. That would be my concern. I think the council president touched on it. I knew that it came from the CARES Act, but I just wondered how it went into to his overall salary and what other benefits that entitled. I do agree that that department, between all of the open meeting law violations that we get and, legally, the lawsuits that we have pending, I don't know if Attorney Rumsey is going to be handling all of these lawsuits, but there's about 6 lawsuits that I know of to this point, and they're hefty lawsuits. And I think we need to make sure that we have attorneys in there who can litigate these types of lawsuits. It's going to take a lot of time to writing the briefs and going to court and going to trial, et cetera. I think having another attorney is something that we need to look at. And I think having somebody in planning is also something that's desperately needed in the city. So, while we cut and people retire out and their positions don't get filled, that doesn't help the citizens of the city. I know that people hate to spend money and we try to cut corners as much as we can. However, we need to be able to have employees in all these different departments to be able to provide and protect the needs of the city residents. With that, I yield, Mr. President. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Kadim.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mary, just a couple of questions on local receipts, and I apologize if you answered these. The rentals, did you mention the rentals? I'm just curious where the rentals were. They were at
I didn't.
34.
Yeah, no, I didn't mention the rentals, but that's timing because we only have those couple of rentals. CDA, BCTC, I think there's one other, and they're annual. So that would be just timing.
Okay, and I didn't want to interrupt, but I just needed clarification. So I had noted other departmental revenues at 19%. Was that the fire department that you were talking about? Okay.
Yes.
Yeah,
yes.
I just didn't hear when you started talking about that. I missed which category.
Fire, police, there are a couple of departments that the timing is,
fines.
and yes,
Okay.
yep.
And then the other question was just the reoccurring revenue costs?
Yeah, so the reoccurring is primarily the Medicaid. And that's, the timing on that is kind of all over the place, but I've noticed that the last couple of years, anyway, 3 years, the largest receipt is generally in the May, June timeframe.
Okay. And so I guess I just want to jump on with the expense for the law department. And again, this is not reflected towards you or to Mr. Howiak, because I agree with Council President. I think Mr. Howiak, Attorney Howiak does a good job for us. But I will compare it to a very similar situation when we had the snow stipend with, the chief of staff getting a $10,000 snow stipend. And I will preface my comments at that time, we didn't know that $10,000 was going back to the mayor, and I'm not suggesting that. However, it is very similar in the sense that we've got $10,000 going to an employee who is being paid to perform legal services for the town. So I'd like to see his contract, because I don't think his contract excludes any type of legal services that are being performed by the city, whether it's litigation or any type of other legal services that we would ask him to do, whether it's negotiations, HR, litigations, defending the city at an MCAD case, which I'm sure we're going to get very familiar with thanks to the school committee. But at the end of the day, I think if he's getting paid $85,000, and I understand he's part-time, I don't think there's a set schedule for him to work, right? He works as a part-time position, but whatever type of legal services we give him, he should be performing those duties within, the contract and the pay that he gets. Now, if Corporation Counsel feels he's underpaid at $85,000, then I think that's something that, that's a contract negotiations between the mayor and legal and obviously this council to approve the contract, but those conversations need to be had. I just think it's an unfortunate situation. Whether it's good times or bad times, I don't think we should be paying individuals additional compensation for things that we're already paying them for, right? So that's just my issue. That's where I stand, and I think we need to take a hard stance on this, because I'm going to tell you that there are people in leadership positions right now that 2 years ago were complaining about a $10,000 stipend going to the chief of staff, and here we are, deja vu, seeing it on the legal side. So, and I was on record last budget cycle saying that I thought the legal budget was too low, that we didn't have enough for legal services for the city our size. So that's just my take. But at the end of the day, that budget was presented to us by Corporation Counsel. We approved it. And I think people need to be held accountable, and they need to be, the standard needs to be set by the council, whether in good times or in bad times. That's just my take. So if you wouldn't mind forwarding over Attorney Howiak's contract to the council, I'd appreciate that.
Thank you. I will certainly get that done for you tomorrow. I will also, for full transparency, let you know, and I think you probably already know this or can probably do the math, is that the other professional services in the law department is going to be significantly under budgeted this year. I did speak with Corporation Counsel today and asked him to put together at least an estimate of what he expects those costs to be through June 30th, so I can begin to plan on an appropriation transfer.
Mhm.
But as you know, there are a number of legal cases out there, and then some that may not have been filed yet, but there seems to be notice that they're coming, and it will clearly, we don't have the staff to take care of those cases. So Corporation Counsel will be looking to go outside to hire attorneys for some of those cases to litigate.
So just in terms of claims moving forward in insurances. So clearly everybody is aware that the superintendent had his issues, and the school committee really, in my opinion, didn't do their job to protect the district or the city. In terms of claims, I know at one point the city was picking up all claims that were coming over from the school committee. Is that still the case? And then the second part of that question is, do we have insurance to cover MCAD cases or EEOC cases or any type of other insurance to cover some exposure?
So to answer the first question, you are right. All claims were coming over. There has been some pushback to the school department that if the claims are specifically school related, that they should be picking them up in their budget. And I believe if you look at the school department detail budget, they have a small amount allocated to that line item. I don't think it'd be enough to cover what we're talking about here. As far as additional insurance, I do not believe there is insurance for those items. I would have to go back to, I don't think there's a separate policy. Let's put it that way. There's the crime policy that we have that generally covers certain aspects of it, but I don't believe it covers this wrongdoing.
So can I ask a question? So in terms of when the school department is making, or the school committee is making decisions that potentially impact the financial aspect of the city, since they may not necessarily have the full budget amount for the claims, do those conversations come over to the city side with Corporation Counsel to have a discussion as to whether or not there's any pushback? Listen, at the end of the day, Corporation Counsel may suggest that the actions that are taken are not in the best interest of the city, and quite frankly, are creating more exposure than anything else. Are any of those conversations taking place, since if the claims are not going to be fully covered by the school department and the city is going to have to pick up for it, where's the input from the city on these matters?
Unfortunately, Counselor, I have not been involved in any of those conversations. I don't know if they've actually been had. I can certainly reach out to Attorney Rumsley and, ask him for some more details on that. But I have not been a party to any meetings or conversations with the school department with regard to the finances of this particular case, or quite frankly, any other case.
Thank you. So, Mr. President, through you, I'm going to yield on those matters, but can you work with the administration to figure out, in terms of this current exposure that might be coming from the lack of disciplinary action or action taken on the superintendent for his actions over on the school side, what the exposure is to the city, how we're going to mitigate that, where the money is going to come from, and then I guess if we can have further conversation just moving forward. In terms of any type of claims, what's the expectation or policy, whether the city is going to continue to pay for these claims, or will it be coming out of the school department budget? At which point, again, I think then the city council or the city side would be removed. Obviously, the mayor is sitting on the school committee. So there's some situations there. But then I'd also just ask that if Mr. Hadi could, because I know in Seekonk we have some additional liability insurance. We may just want to be able to get a cost for some type of insurance in terms of trying to mitigate some of this exposure. So when we have some MCAD cases or EEOC cases, the insurance company will be picking it up, and it's a deductible versus, as opposed to potentially a $500,000 settlement or claims. Because half the time when you get to the MCAD, EEOC, a lot of times you're settling before you even get to a trial, unless you've got a really, really good case. And it's just really a cost benefit analysis, good business practice. And at that point, you're paying $5,000 to $10,000 deductible versus, $500,000. Now, I get you'll probably make it up on the back end if you have a lot of claims with the type of policy that you have. But if we could just take a look at that, I'd appreciate it.
Counselor, I got your request. I will send a communication over to the mayor as well as the school side regarding your concerns for exposure and the financial capabilities, should there be a financial component attached to that. And I will, of course, forward that communication over to you. And in addition to that, I don't know if we're out of line for this request, but if that conversation does occur and the financial obligation does come from the city's side, I would certainly encourage, I don't know if it's even possible to have an executive session meeting at that time to discuss possible litigation and what those costs would be, much rather than them being done in public. So we can certainly have that conversation, Council, but I'll make sure I get you that information at your request. Council Vice President.
Mrs. Sahadi, just to go back to Mr. Howiak's, the $10,000, can you tell me when that was done?
I believe it was paid in December.
So I'm just going to echo some of the statements. It's nothing against Mr. Howiak's work. Sorry, but we seem to find out about these things after the fact. I know we had stipends on the ordinance agenda, and I had had a conversation with Attorney Rumsey about it. And he does not think that the city council has the authority to approve stipends. I know we're not calling this one, but you have to call it something. And in these times, whether it's coming out of the care money or not, I mean, we have a person that's making $80,000 for a part-time work. Not that he's not doing that. And again, nothing against him, but to find out after the fact, it just doesn't sit right with me after going through the last administration and things that were done that shouldn't have been done. So I just wanted to say that, and you will be forwarding the contract so we can see it. As far as the school department goes, and I had asked Council President about this the other day. Obviously, we weren't in on their executive sessions, but there's information that's come out on, what the decision was. And the superintendent himself has offered a public apology. So he's clearly cognizant of some wrongdoing. And I feel like if this is putting us in a position to be sued, that it shouldn't come over to the city side. If we're being sued specifically because of actions by the school committee. So not exactly sure how that works. However, I don't necessarily think it's fair in this case if the school committee is taking a vote that we are then, for whatever their reasons might be, and we're going to have some large lawsuits in front of us. It shouldn't then fall on the back of the city. And I really do think that if the council is in agreement, the city council in the least should at least make a statement about the vote that was taken in the process that I feel should have been followed, that wasn't followed, that would have normally been followed if it was any other employee. And then the only other question I had, Mrs. Sahadi, on page 2 of the revenues for the marijuana, the $50,000, and I apologize if you had said this at the beginning of your presentation, but that was the yearly fee, the $50,000 yearly fee.
That's correct.
So I was speaking with Attorney Rumsey about Northeast Alternatives, and he happened to bring up in that conversation that the $50,000 annual fee is no longer a $50,000 annual fee. It's a $50,000 one-time fee. Is that correct?
That's correct. So Attorney Rumsley took a look at the original host agreements and looked at the purpose of the annual fee. And you're correct, it was an annual fee, and therefore it was budgeted in the FY21 budget as an annual fee. After looking at it, he determined that it really is not an annual fee. It's more of an application fee to vet the vendor, to vet the location, and so on. And so as a result, he is in the process of amending the host agreements to indicate such. So in this fiscal year,
Could I just back up for a second before you continue? Sure. So Attorney Rumsey made this determination on contracts with the marijuana vendors that were put in place, not based on any decision by the CCC, just on his determination by looking through the contracts that we couldn't do this?
You need to speak specifically to Attorney Rumsley, but I believe so. I believe the purpose of the fee was more of an application fee as opposed to an annual fee based on his research with regard to the fees that a municipality can charge a marijuana vendor. And his conclusion was that we could not charge the vendor the 3% plus an annual $50,000 fee.
So
But again, it really should be him giving you the explanation.
Okay, so from a revenue standpoint, did Northeast pay? How many times has Northeast paid that fee?
They only paid it once because I spoke to Northeast prior to them sending the second check in.
How many times was it in the budget? How many years was it in the budget?
I think this is the second full year. There might have been the first year it may have been in the first year, but we didn't receive any of them. If you remember, there was a lag in them getting opened.
Mhm.
And then last year we had the 150 in there and we did receive the $50,000 from each of the three vendors, Nature's Medicine, Sunnyside, and Northeast.
So the
This year,
150 that we have in there now, is it again for those same three vendors?
that's correct.
So we're not expected to collect that 150.
That's correct.
Okay. With that, I yield. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. Next counselor that would like to speak, Counselor Pelletier.
I'd like to go to the snow budget. It's $172 that was allocated. And it seems to me like there's only 18,000 left. Is that right, Mr. Sadi?
So the snow budget is on an annual basis. It's one of the areas that we're allowed to overspend and it not affect really our operating budget. So where all of the other expenditures or appropriations within the budget, we are not allowed to overspend those expenditures. But on the snow budget, we're allowed to and carry forward that into the next fiscal year. As of this particular point in time, meaning December 31st, the total snow budget was $421,000 and we had expended to date $35,781 and then had encumbrances of $18,700. So at this particular point, we had remaining in the budget $366,000 or we had spent 12.9%. I will tell you that we have just paid recently the snow vendors in January of this year. So I don't know exactly what that amount was, but we do have some additional vendors that have been paid subsequent to this report being run.
So you're telling me we had in the snow budget 400,000?
421,243. It's on page 22 of the city expenses.
And the last storm cost us what, 38,000?
Well, through December 31, we had paid $35,781 to the vendors, but we did run a vendor payment to the snow vendors just this past week. We had an employee that had been out sick and it was her task to get this done. And so those checks are a little delayed, but they did go out. And I don't know what the total of that warrant was.
Well, the big storm we had, is that the 38,000 you paid out?
38 plus whatever we paid in this most recent snow vendor warrant that was just last week, which would have been January.
We find 38,000. If we got 38,000 for that snowstorm, you got a bargain. Gotta be more.
Well, plus the warrant that just went out in January. I want to say that warrant was, oh, look at John Perry's answering my question. Much of that is salt purchases. The 7 or 8 inches is at $25,000 to $30,000 an inch.
Okay. Now, out of the capital project, whether they voted on the monies in 2016, 17, or 18, in this book, you got a lot of balances on these things. Is that something that's gonna stay there, or that money gonna?
Are you talking about the inactive capital projects?
Yeah.
So the inactive capital projects, the two larger ones, Sucker Brook Driveway, 97,000, and Jefferson Street Land Acquisition, 362,000. Paul Ferlin is currently looking at being able to expend those monies in projects that he's got coming forward that he will need to spend rather than bonding for those. Phase 2, 3, and 7 of the water projects, he really needs to transfer those into a phase that is current, these phases are all closed, into a phase that is currently open, and we've talked about that as well. He's in the process of, I think he's at phase 21 right now. And then on the city side, their majority of them are park projects.
All right, so there is money there though.
That's correct.
Now, get back to the marijuana. They're not paying 50,000 anymore. How does someone look into that when, who asked them to do that? I mean, why go looking for trouble? He's got enough work to do. And then he finds out that they don't have to pay it. Now, I'm still a little concerned about Northeast over there by, they paid it 2%, whatever it is, and they still want police coverage. I think it's wrong. I don't know if he's still, if the city's still paying for that, but that's not right. You got the other marijuana places that probably wanted to do the same thing. What is going on there? Are we still paying for the police protection up there?
We are, that's part of the impact fee. So they're paying us a 3% impact fee on their sales. And part of the impact to the city of Fall River is the detail that's required to protect the residents of that area as well as the customers of Northeast. And so the detail is required, and that is part of the 3% impact fee that we're receiving. So yes, we are still paying the detail at Northeast up on the avenue.
Oh, 3% for them is what, 100,000 a month? They pay us?
Approximately, that's correct.
And we gotta kick back the police with.
That's correct.
Now,
That's correct.
any other marijuana shops, are you utilizing the police?
I think they did at the beginning when it was busy, but I don't think they've had a need for any detail since then.
Well, it's unfortunate that the guy makes a lot of money up there and he needs the police department, and we get stuck with a bill. I don't think it's right. Maybe they should go up to 4% on him. And then, hey, you can pay your own cops, I don't know if that's negotiable or what. When do you guys sit down with the marijuana guys saying that, hey, I think this is wrong, we have to up the ante here?
3% is the maximum we can charge them as an impact fee. So we're at the maximum.
That's a maximum. All right, and another thing, we had Bill Kenny come in front of us in a presentation, and he can do a lot, he says, here in the city of Fall River, but he's got no help. So it's understanding that they're gonna give Bill some help, but it seems like we want another lawyer instead. And then the other lawyer wants more money to do this and that. So where does poor Kenny go? Does he get any help or not? I mean, if he gets help, he says he can do the job much better. What's
Well, as you know, I believe there was some discussion with regard to an assistant city planner, but that position was not funded in the budget last year. Mr. Kenny is hopeful that the position will be funded in the FY22 budget.
okay? Now, what are we doing for city administrator? Going to China to look for somebody? Where they going? I mean, there's nobody can do the job around here, or the job don't pay enough for the people to come to Fall River. What's the story?
Is the question about the city administrator, Counselor?
Yes.
There are interviews scheduled for tomorrow afternoon with a number of individuals. And I will be, we should probably get some kind of an update at some point tomorrow. I believe there is at least 3 individuals that are going to be getting their first round of interviews tomorrow.
What is the base pay for the city administrator? Mary?
It's by contract, Counselor. So in the prior budget, I believe it was at 144, but it is by contract. So it really is negotiable.
Well, 144, that's pretty good money, I would say. Although, we got a guy in Seatown, $1.50, but he works hard. But he runs the town. Is it the money problem that we can't get somebody? Is that it?
I can't answer that, Counselor. I don't know.
I would say this, Counselor, just for your point of information on this, The
Mhm.
mayor did reach out to me about a month ago or a couple weeks ago. We had a conversation like we do on a regular basis, and they did adjust the job description for the city administrator. I believe it may or may not have included a range in salary, and that may have increased the opportunity for the applicants who are in the first round of interviews that begins tomorrow. So I think they probably may have done a range in salary. So just so you know.
And, all right, well, it's been a while. We still don't have anybody, and maybe we need one of our city administrator, and maybe we'll need another lawyer. If they can do the job right and cover the job right, but, you know, you come from the outside, I don't know if they gotta learn the whole thing, or they're coming from another community. And then again, when you come from another community, you say, well, what's wrong with this guy? And that's the way I look at it. The last guy, I guess the council was a little too hard on him. He decided not to come to Fall River. But again, we have a right to ask the questions, and he didn't like the questions, and he says, I'm not going to Fall River. Those city councils are too tough. So be it. I hope we can try to get these guys to come in. Mary works hard and everything else. She needs a little break. So if we can get somebody in there, I would appreciate that. And, see what's going on. Maybe need help too as well. With that, I think I'm all set. Mary, thank you.
Thank you, Counselor.
I yield.
Thank you, Counselor. Next Counselor is Counselor Dion.
Thank you, Council President. I just want to mention two things. One being that I also had a conversation with corporate counsel today. And he's very comfortable with litigation. That's basically his wheelhouse. I don't think he feels he necessarily needs assistance in that area. And not to demean anybody, but I think the lighter load would be what would be taken up if we had somebody else in that department. The open meeting law, the ordinances, that sort of thing that bogs him down while he's trying to address some of the litigation, some of the big ticket items. I think, that would be beneficial to his department and would be a help to him. Because he definitely does feel very comfortable with being involved in litigation. So I don't think that's an issue that we necessarily need to have another person to perform the same duties. So that's just one item. And then the second item is I agree with my colleagues in seat 1 and seat 4. The city council was not privy to anything that was going on in the school department. The city council did not have jurisdiction over or have any involvement or knowledge of any of the executive session minutes or any of the things that have come to light publicly about the superintendent. I agree with my colleague in seat 4 that his public statement was somewhat of, I guess, for lack of a better word, an admission of guilt in terms of, yes, I did it. I feel bad that I did it. I shouldn't have done it. That leads one to believe that the people that came forward, their complaints were legitimate or enough that the school committee felt that an investigation should have ensued. So their actions or inaction, the fact that maybe we have members of a school department who feel like they fell through the cracks during this whole process and perhaps weren't supported. I think the decisions, the action, the inaction should fall squarely on the people involved, the people who made the decisions, and the people who ultimately will cause or have this result in litigation if it proves that that's the direction it should go in, and it shouldn't come to the city side. Had we had the ability to weigh in on it, had we been aware of what was going on, had a say in it, yes, then I think we, the city council and the city, would bear and hold some responsibility. But in this situation, I think, I think it squarely should stay on the city side. Obviously, we don't know what's gonna happen. But I just wanted to make that statement, that I think it's unfortunate that it took the path it took. And I guess we just have to, at this point, wait and see what is gonna happen. But I don't think the city or the taxpayers should have to be the ones that need to worry about it. With that, I yield.
Thank you. Any further questions regarding this? Councilor Kilby, followed by Councilor Pereira.
Okay.
You could just unmute yourself, Councilor Kilby, just unmute yourself.
Thank you, Mr. President. In my opinion, this conversation with regard to, and I don't want to pile on it, but it's totally inappropriate for this council to be talking about the conduct of the Fall River School Committee and the alleged conduct of the superintendent. It's not within our jurisdiction. It's not within our purview. And we are actually probably maybe exposing ourselves even more towards potential litigation as a result of these conversations. So I held my comments back as respect for Councilor Kadim and others. And, but after I heard what Councilor Deanna was saying here, we have no authority to even discuss the decisions that are made by the school committee. Whether we disagree or not disagree, President Pond, I'm looking at you right in the eye right now. We have no jurisdiction to even discuss the choices that they made. That's all an executive session. It has to do with an employment contract. It's private and it should not be discussed. With that, I yield. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. And just on that point, the only reason that I've allowed the discussion to take place is because there is a financial component with the quarterly update that may or may not require some financial.
There's also a man's reputation that whether, and forgive me for even talking about this more, but there's an individual's reputation that is in line here. And for us as a council, as some council trying to assault that reputation and getting into specifics is just, it's not a good thing. And I've seen it happen before and with other city employees. And we have made that mistake a couple of times, my friend, in terms of assaulting people when it was inappropriate. So I don't want to see this council go in that direction. The school committee is an independent, autonomous body. And we shouldn't even be discussing that policy. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Pereira, followed by Councilor Kadim.
I've got to say that I somewhat agree that we shouldn't be discussing this because I, for one, have no firsthand knowledge of anything that went on in the school committee side. None. Zilch. I've seen stuff on Facebook, but again, I don't think that everything on Facebook is factual. So I don't, quite frankly, I don't pay attention to that. But I agree. I don't think that we should be talking about that. But when we're talking about it being financial and litigation and take it from the school committee side and not from the city side, we are one whole city. So what do we take money away from kids and programs and that they need? I liked Councilor Kadim's idea of let's looking into getting insurance policies. But I'm going to tell you now, you're not going to get an insurance policy if any insurance company knows that there's any litigation going on. I'm concerned with the litigation on our side. And I think it would be helpful to find out how many cases we have, how many lawsuits we have on the city side that are going to cost us big money if they win. And yet we're not apprised of all of them. I can name at least 5 of them that I know of that are going on. And I think we should look at that. And I liked Councilor Kadim's thought of getting some type of insurance. And I think, Ms. Sahadi, that would be something I definitely talk to the mayor about. The other thing, Council Pelletier brought up on the city administrator, I don't know, I thought the last person that we had was willing to do it. Was it 90,000, Mary? Mr. Sahadi, was it 90,000
No,
or how much was it? 120?
140.
Wasn't 140, was it 140?
I think so. I think it was 140, yes.
But here's my thoughts on that. The mayor, whoever the mayor is, needs to have a city administrator that they can work with, that they trust, that they feel comfortable with. And because of the charter, and Colin Dias is right, the charter is a mess. And I wish that we could look at changing some of it. But to be honest with you, that's what it should be. But we only vote on it because in our breakdown of the city, it says that the city administrator is a department head. City administrator is not a department head. Just like Mrs. Coelho, because she's a department head, I don't know, what does she have, 2 people there? Those contracts come to us for approval, like the grant writer. Is she a department head? And if we change that to that they were directors, then we wouldn't have a say in who we hired, only as far as maybe the contract. But I think it's wrong for the city council to vote on someone for a city administrator. I have never in all my years voted for who a mayor selects to be his or her city administrator.
Here, here.
That's what I think. I think it should be a choice of the mayor. And if the school department was in fact paying for their own litigation, we wouldn't have had Mr. Howiak having to do the transportation. Maybe Attorney Assad would have done it or somebody else. But to say, we can't take from here or from there, let's just look at the blanket of litigations and lawsuits that go on and try to figure out what can we as a community do better to make sure that we don't have people in positions where they are suing us or suing, individuals that work for the city and ultimately the city. But I'd like to know all the lawsuits we have, and maybe we can do an executive session on that to see where we're at. The longer you draw out these lawsuits, the more money it's going to cost. If you can settle something, settle it and move on and learn from it. With that, I yield. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Kadim.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just feel like I need to respond to that. So one, I want to clarify everything that I stated was stated publicly. I mean, we've got a superintendent who released a public statement. I didn't go into the details. I'd love to go into the details of what he said because everybody would be disgusted. I'm not taking back anything I said. I leave it up to the voters of the city if they feel like I'm not doing my job to vote me out. Everybody knows that I speak my mind, and if I feel like something is not right, I'm going to address it. And for the city council to even suggest or think, or even members of the city council to suggest or think that we have something that transpired over on the school department that's going to cost the city financially, and the city side of the house is going to have to pick up the claims when we have no action or authority, as Councilor Kilby has said, and I agree, because we have no authority or action to do any disciplinary issues. They are their own governing body. However, when their actions impact the city side of stuff, we need to be able to be at the table to have those conversations. That's all I'm saying. So if the school committee and the school department are going to address personnel matters, and they're going to take 100% responsibility for all the exposure on their budget side, then that's fine. Then the city council has no say whatsoever. But the moment you have that exposure and there are lawsuits and claims that are coming out that are going to be funded on the city side of things, then this city council should have a say, or this administration should have a say on what's going on. It's called holding people accountable. I know there are some folks on this council that just don't want to hold anybody accountable. We all want to get along, because if we all get along, then we're all friends. We're nice, and we like each other. But the minute you ask a question, everybody takes it personal. Accountability is not about taking things personally. Accountability is what we were elected to do. And I'm not going to take anything that I said back. And if people want to sue me or put me in a lawsuit, that's fine. But I'm going to protect it. You can make all the faces you want, Councilor Kilby. You know I'm right.
I'm listening. That's all.
You know I'm right,
This is not-
because
This is not drama.
because
I'm just listening.
One person at a time. Councilor Kadim.
because at the end of the day, if there is a decision that was made by the school committee that's going to cost us $500,000 or $1 million, don't you think this administration or the city council should have some say in whether or not we agree with decisions that are being made to fund it? Now, if the $1 million or the 500,000 is coming from the schools, then fine. I agree with you. Let's take a step back. We have nothing to say. That's not our jurisdiction, right? But we know, and Mary Sahadi, Ms. Sahadi told us that the claims, past practice has been that the claims have come from the city side, with the exception of recently that there are some that are built into the operating budget. But if there are claims that are coming in, we have no insurance, then that means we're either shortchanging the folks over on the school side, or we're going to have to find some monies on our side, and we're going to have to raise and appropriate it for it because we don't have enough money to cover it. That's where I'm going. And in terms of the insurance, and I agree with Councilor Pereira that, I think we need to look at all the litigation. But moving forward, I mean, the insurance is only going to be able to cover claims moving forward. I'm just trying to limit the exposure from the city. I know the exposure happens on both sides, on the city side and on the school side. I'm just not happy. And based on the statement that was released, there was ownership that was taken by the superintendent, and it's very clear. And it's very clear that there's going to be lawsuits that are going to be levied against the school committee. The only thing I was asking, or the school department, the only thing I was asking Mary Sahadi was, where's that money coming from? That was the extent of it. So I yield.
Thank you.
So-
I'll be really quick, Mr. President, please.
Councilor Kilby.
Thank you, Mr. President. Sean, I agree with half of what you're saying. I really think there has to be accountability. There has to be, decisions made. Like I said before, it's not our jurisdiction to make those decisions. However, I will say, Sean, that things could have been phrased a little differently, because what I don't like is tarnishing someone's reputation over accusations. And I barely know Mr. Malone, Superintendent Malone. I barely know him, but I'm getting the social media stuff like a lot of people are getting. But I think this meeting, Councilor Kadim, went a little too far. I mean, I think maybe, Councilor, you could have made your comments talking about potential liability and insurance and stuff like that without really mentioning specifics. And Councilor Dion, the same. I mean,
All right, I respect your opinion, Councilor
we don't
Kilby.
want to do that. We don't want to do that in this forum.
All right, Councilor, if I may interject for a moment, please, just
Yes,
for
sir.
one quick second. We've all kind of spoke about
Yeah,
the
I'm
defending.
prolonging it, and I shouldn't be, so I yield.
Thank
Thank
I have a couple questions for Mrs. Sahadi, going back to the financial update, and then I think I'm the last person who has to speak about it. Civic celebrations, $40,000. This fiscal year is going to end July 1. I'm not expecting there to be any kind of huge civic celebrations. We have $40,000 allocated for civic events. Is there a plan to reallocate those funds this fiscal year, Mrs. Sahadi?
Not at this particular moment. Certainly, as you know, when we get to the end of the year, we look at those accounts that have surpluses in them, speak to those departments to allow them to give us the opportunity to reallocate them or reappropriate them to areas that where we may have shortfalls. And then we bring to you a transfer order transferring out of a certain department and into another department for the coverage of any potential shortfalls. So I would just leave that there at this particular point in time.
Okay. And there's no current capital plans or capital needs in our fire or police department that we could allocate towards that versus going to bond?
Oh, I mean, certainly. I mean, we could potentially look at a capital item in either department and come to you and transfer from expense other to expense capital for the coverage of a particular item that might need to be purchased.
All right.
But yes, we could do that. Can I just go back and just add a couple of things for clarification? I did receive clarification. The school committee or school department would be paying for any settlement from any litigation that may occur. And it's also possible that we could take any litigation expenses and offset them through net school spending. So if the city were responsible to make any of the payments, we could potentially utilize those payments to the attorneys through net school spending, and the litigation expense itself, the school committee would be responsible to make those payments.
Okay, on that matter, briefly, because it's on my note here to ask you questions. I have a tendency to sometimes watch the school committee meetings because I'm quite boring and I don't have a life. And I was looking at the capital program, the capital needs, and I acknowledge that all the schools kind of came on at the same time. I understand and I acknowledge that there's a possibility that the schools need repairs, and I understand there's statements of interest. I spoke to Vice Chair Coster of the school committee this week, kind of speaking to what Councilor Kilby and I are trying to accomplish as well on another topic. But I kind of felt obligated to speak to the fact that the school department has a number of capital needs. The capital needs that the school department does have will come out of bond or whatever, however we find to get them, we get the money. I know Mr. Pacheco was speaking at the school committee meeting about $5 million for some things. I know there was some discussions about the baseball fields, right? Very frustrated to hear that we have a $263 million school, and while I understand and respect the fact that we needed to upgrade our pool so our swimming teams could compete at high levels, which they couldn't in the previous pool, I just felt that, and I'm just speaking because I have the right to my own opinion on this, is that we have a $263 million school and we have to possibly go bond for baseball fields, and we might need to redo our football field again. Like those, we're talking possibly $7 million in capital needs on top of a $263 million school. So when we're having discussions, and I know we're only talking $50,000 for this or assistant city planner this, we really got to rein it in, because I'm telling you, the debt payments just on school projects alone, from my understanding, Mrs. Sahadi, these are not, the debt payments for school projects are not coming out of the school department's operating account, correct?
That's
They're coming
correct.
out of
That's correct.
They're coming out of the cities. Now, should a conversation be had about indirects and possibly having another discussion with the school leadership team about maybe picking up the debt payments for these bonds, with the exception of Durfee High School? I think that is the case. But I was frustrated to hear and watch that, we have $7 million possibly. That's just for Durfee. We have $5 million for here, and the school department has these needs, and we want to make sure our kids are educated in an environment that is second to none so that they can be productive and adaptable to society. But I'll be honest, we have a problem where we continue to just spend and spend and spend. And I'm going to say, like I said in the budget time, and I've said to the mayor, we need to rein it in. If anybody's looked at our capital improvement plan that we have in our full finance agenda tonight, that's going to be referred to finance, there's a possible $2 million deficit that the finance team has to go through. And we're not even talking about the debt exclusion or when that's happening. So we have some challenging financial times ahead. And while I understand the law department needs some help and the city planner needs some help and this person needs some help, I'm taking a different approach here. Let's see what the needs are for the school department in the city, and then let's formulate a plan and see who needs more. Because we went from having a budget where we're going to, cut all waste and just live within our means. And every meeting, I'm frustrated with the fact that I watch the school committee meeting, they need capital needs. I listen to the city council meeting, and everybody wants to help out all these different departments with assistance. I think we need to pause for a moment, and we need to find out what the needs are of the city, what's a priority and what isn't a priority. And I don't think giving assistance to assistance right now is a priority when we don't know what the budget's going to look like next year. We have capital needs that are beyond imaginable. If you look at this, it's a 5-year budget forecast, and our continued debt doesn't go down. So I just want to urge us to, I'm speaking as from a counselor's point of view right now. We just need to pause a moment and get a picture from the finance team about what actual needs are, because we have a school of $263 million that's going to be a debt exclusion in 23 or 24 or whatever fiscal year that's coming in, and we don't even have baseball fields attached to that, or in a football field that needs to be redone. That I know Councilor Kilby, about a decade or so ago, worked his tail off to get that bonded with former Mayor Lambert. So we need to really think before we start throwing all these numbers out and giving everybody an assistant, because and I know I was in that building a couple months last year, and I see how hard our department heads work, and I see how hard our teachers work and our police officers work. But we need to hold the phone and rein in some of the expenses here. School Committee Man Aguirre was making some great points at the school committee meeting the other day, and he was asking Mr. Pacheco specifically about why can't we, it's going to cost $5 million to get that school up and running. Can we go find another school? Mr. Pacheco said he can't, but School Committee Man Aguirre is being proactive in trying to ask questions from a school committee standpoint and a taxpayer standpoint. I'm sitting here from a taxpayer standpoint, and I got people calling my phone and sending text messages to counselors about their taxes going up. Well, let me tell you, folks, your taxes are going to go up tremendously when the debt exclusion comes onto your tax rolls, and that isn't the fault of the city council, right? That's not our fault. Tax rates go up, the residents voted for it. You want to see tax bills high, we have to have a conversation about tax bills, and they don't even include baseball field or softball field, and we possibly have to redo the football field. Priorities is what we need to start talking about, not needs and stuff like that. So I just want to, I let everybody speak about the financial picture. It's not as strong as it's not predictable what's going to happen in 2023 and 2022. We need to hold the fort down. Councilor Pereira.
I have to say, I agree with a lot of what you said, Council President, but if you're not taking care of the buildings and maintaining things the way that you should be, this is what happens when things fall apart. And the city, when you hire people, you need to hire your carpenters, your electricians, your masonry workers, whatever. Hire people that can do the job and that are on the job, doing the job all the time. And unfortunately, sometimes that doesn't happen. But there should be a crew of people. Look at our own building, maintenance division. We don't have a registered electrician there now. We don't have a carpenter there. We do, I think we might have one, but you need to have an electrician, a carpenter, somebody to be able to go and repair these things when something small happens. We tend to wait till it falls apart and then we're going to do something. I watched the school committee meeting as you did. I heard Mr. Pacheco talking about all of the projects that they're working on, the windows they've installed, the new boilers that they've bought. In the boilers, it'll be energy efficient, et cetera. We need to be looking for things like that. Solar panels went on the new high school. That's going to save us money. But if you have your own home, and if you're not taking care of your home and it falls apart, you're losing value. Then if you have to have somebody come in and repair everything, it's going to cost you a lot of money. And you're right with the tax bills. And I had asked Mrs. Sahadi, I had called her because I was inundated with calls. And the third and fourth quarter, the tax bills are a little different. On one of the properties I have, my taxes went up $838.
Must be a commercial property.
Yes.
Yep.
Because we gave a break, it's a 6-family, we gave a break to residents this year. And honestly, residential property owners aren't feeling it. And there's a big disparity over people that come in and buy commercial properties or buy properties in Fall River. And some people who live in Fall River who've had properties for many years, who have little to no mortgage and can afford to charge their tenants a lower rent. You have people that are coming in, buying these commercial properties for big money, and then they're charging big money for rent because it's a profit. And, there's two classes in Fall River of people as far as rent goes. Now you got everybody talking about rent control. How do you do rent control when a landlord needs to pay their bills. I think it's difficult, and I would hope that the debt exclusion would be pushed out a year. Because I think right now it's tough for people. I would be in favor of being pushed out a year. With that, I yield. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. Hearing no further discussions regarding our quarterly update, is there a motion to adjourn finance?
Motion to adjourn, Mr. President.
Motion to adjourn has been made by Counselor Kilby, seconded by Counselor Peckham. Roll call on adjournment.
Sorry, Councilors Kadim,
Yes.
Dion,
Yes.
Kilby,
Yes.
Lullaby LeBeau,
Yes.
Lee,
Yes.
Peckham,
Yes.
Pelletier,
Yes.
Carrera,
Yes.
and President Ponti.
Yes. Former City Council full council meeting will now come to order, 8:14 p.m. Madam Clerk, roll call.
Councilors Kadim,
Here.
Dion.
Here.
Kilby,
Here.
Lullaby LeBeau,
Here.
Lee,
Here.
Peckham,
Here.
Pelletier,
Here.
Carrera,
Here.
President Ponti.
Here, if you could please stand and for a moment of silent prayer. Thank you, and thanks to our Assistant City Clerk, we have a flag, so I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States.
Pledge allegiance of the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, for this, pursuant to the open meeting law, any person may make an audio or video recording of this public meeting or may transmit the meeting through any medium. Attendees are therefore advised that such recordings or transmissions are being made, whether perceived or unperceived by those present, and are deemed acknowledged and permissible. We are conducting this meeting through Zoom. All councilors are here, and we are conducting it due to the global pandemic that is before us. All communications that need to be sent to the city clerk and to be heard before this body would need to be emailed to city_council@fallriverma.org by 3 p.m. the date of the said meeting. I am going to acknowledge the fact that, again, this is a remote meeting and being conducted through Zoom communications. Hearing that, Madam Clerk, good evening.
Good evening. So the first item on the agenda is the dismissal of the city's case, City Council versus Jazel F. Correa II, and the council order, which reads, ordered that the Fall River City Council hereby authorizes the dismissal of Fall River City Council versus Jazel F. Correa II, Bristol Court, CA number 1973 CV 00885, and in conjunction therewith approves the September 18th, 2019 Special City Council Executive Session Meeting Minutes and authorizes release of the same.
Motion to adopt the order.
Motion to adopt the order has been made by Councilor Kilby, seconded by Councilor Dion. Any discussion? Hearing none, roll call on adoption.
On adoption of the order, Councilors Kadim,
Councilor, can you unmute yourself, please?
Sorry. Yes.
Dion,
Yes.
Kilby? Kilby,
Kilby?
Yes.
Lullaby LeBeau,
Yes.
Lee,
Yes.
Peckham,
Yes.
Pelletier,
Yes.
Carrera,
Yes.
and President Ponti.
Yes.
We have the communication from the mayor and the 5-year capital improvement plan.
Motion to adopt and place on file.
It would be appropriate to refer it to Finance, Councilor.
Oh.
Refer to finance.
Motion so made.
Motion to refer to Finance has been made by Councilor Kilby.
Second.
By Councilor Peckham. Discussion on the referral. Hearing none, roll call.
On referral to the Finance Committee, Councilors Kadim,
Yes.
Dion,
Yes.
Kilby,
Yes.
Lullaby LeBeau,
Yes.
Lee,
Yes.
Peckham,
Yes.
Pelletier,
Yes.
Carrera,
Yes.
and President Ponti.
Yes.
We have the mayor's 5-year financial forecast of city revenues.
Motion to refer to Finance would be appropriate.
Motion to refer to finance.
Second.
Second.
Motion to refer to finance. This is item 4, Madam Clerk. I'm having a hard time seeing it on my screen.
Great.
This is item number 3.
Sorry. Motion to refer to finance has been made by Councilor Kilby, seconded by Councilor Peckham. Discussion on the referral. Hearing none, roll call.
On referral to Finance Committee, Councilors Kadim,
Yes.
Dion,
Yes.
Kilby,
Yes.
Lullaby LeBeau,
Yes.
Lee,
Yes.
Peckham,
Yes.
Pelletier,
Yes.
Pereira,
Yes.
President Ponti.
Yes.
Now we have item number 4, which is the quarter 2 budget report.
Motion to accept and place on file.
Second.
Motion to accept the item and place it on file has been made by Councilor Kadim,
Second.
seconded by Councilor Pereira. Discussion. Roll call.
To accept and place on file, Councilors Kadim,
Yes.
Dion,
Yes.
Kilby,
Yes.
Lullaby LeBeau,
Yes.
Lee,
Yes.
Peckham,
Yes.
Pelletier,
Yes.
Pereira,
Yes.
President Ponti.
Yes.
Item number 5 is a communication from the mayor and a proposed ordinance regarding structures on or over public ways.
Motion refer to finance.
Going to refer to ordinance, I believe.
The ordinance. Yeah.
Motion to refer to ordinance has been made by
Second.
Councilor Pereira, seconded by Councilor Peckham. Discussion. Hearing none. Roll call.
On referral, Councilors Kadim,
Yes.
Dion,
Yes.
Kilby,
Yes.
Lullaby LeBeau,
Yes.
Lee,
Yes.
Peckham,
Yes.
Pelletier,
Yes.
Pereira,
Yes.
and President Ponti.
Yes. Before you entertain this item, Madam Clerk, I just want everybody to know that we do have Ken Fiola in our waiting room for this TIF. If there's questions, I know some councilors may have had questions, so is it appropriate to invite him in for any questions that we might have and want to waive the rules?
May I ask a question, Mr. President?
Sure, Councilor.
What was the vote of the TIF board? Was it unanimous vote or
This
was
is-
it?
These are amendments to the existing TIFs for Hutchins and CFOX. So that's all it is. It's not actually a new TIF.
I actually think we discussed this before. I might be wrong.
We did.
So I'm going to make a motion that we adopt the approval, the request.
Motion to adopt items A and B after reading has been made by Councilor Kilby. Is there a second?
I'll second. It's only a language change. It was only
Right.
terminology on the tip. So maybe Mr. Fiola would be able to inform the council of it's just a language change on the TIF.
Well, it's up to him, but I think we discussed this before with prior TIFs, but maybe for the sake of the public, it's okay, but I'm ready just to vote on this now, Council Pereira.
Motion to adopt, I see Councilor Lee. Motion to adopt the TIF amendments has been made by Councilor Kilby, seconded by Councilor Pereira. The discussion, Councilor Lee.
I would object to this only based on information that whoever's paying attention to these meetings or whoever's paying attention to this, I believe they should know the details, even if it's minor. I yield.
Agenda, please.
Councilor Kilby, are you sorry, Councilor Lee, are you asking to bring Mr. Fiola on board to ask some questions?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I think it's important to hear all the details, if not just for to be put on the record.
I agree with you. That's why he's here. We have a motion to adopt that is on the floor, which we are having discussion on. But is there a motion to waive the rules? Ask Mr. Fiola to speak.
Waive the rules.
Waive the rules has been made by Councilor Kilby, seconded by Councilor Lee. On inviting Mr. Fiola on board, roll call.
Councilors Kadim,
Yes.
Dion,
Yes.
Kilby,
Yes.
Lullaby LeBeau,
Yes.
Lee,
Yes.
Peckham,
Yes.
Pelletier,
Yes.
Pereira,
Yes.
President Ponti.
Yes, Mr. Fiola, can you hear us? Mr. Fiola, I'm not going to remove him, don't worry. Mr. Fiola. All right, I'm going to do a 2-minute recess and give him a call. Just hang tight. We are in recess. 2 minutes. after a brief recess to get Mr. Feiler on board. There was a motion that has been passed to waive the rules to invite Mr. Feiler to speak on some clarifying points regarding this TIF amendment. Mr. Feiler, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much, and good evening, councilors. Essentially, what you have before you tonight is a technical amendments to the two previous TIFs that were approved by the city council back in September. At that time, the TIF, the council approved the TIFs for Seafox Holdings as well as Hudson's Holdings, and we took those approvals as part of the TIF agreement and fulfilled and submitted an application to the state for state investment tax credits. Those investment tax credits were subsequently granted by the State Economic Assistance Coordinating Council, subject to some technical additions to the existing TIF agreements that were previously approved by the council. Essentially, the amendments or the additions to the TIFs add language to each TIF stating that this agreement and the terms contained herein should not be altered without prior authorization from the EACC and the City of Fall River, and a written amendment to this agreement. The second amendment would be to require the company to provide the EACC with an annual report as dictated by state law. And then third, this agreement shall be binding upon subsequent owners of such parcel of real property. So the approval of this into the TIFs does not alter any of the benefits that the company is getting from the city, but it does allow the companies to receive their state investment tax credits.
Any questions for Mr. Feiler after that recap? Councilor Pereira.
No, I was on, as a member of the TIF board, when I found out that the state was having their meeting to give them some additional incentives. I did participate on that Zoom meeting, and that's why some of the language was changed. But I think Council Lee was right. I'm glad that Mr. Fiola was here so that the public is aware of what the situation is. Thank you, Mr. Fiola. I yield, Mr. President.
Thank you, Council. Any further questions? Councilor Kilby.
Yeah, I just want to thank Kenny for your good work, Mr. Fiola, and I know you bring a lot to the table. I think we had private conversations about this, so thank you very much for all you do for the city.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Councilor Kilby, and thank you to each of the city councilors, because truly, we have to continue to work in partnership so that we can move these types of projects forward, create jobs for the city, spur additional private investment, and really help transform the economic climate of the city per se.
And you owe me a cigar with a walk with the dogs.
That I do.
Sure you wear a mask. Thank you, Councilor.
Yes.
Anything further? Councilor Lee.
Mr. Fiola, the EACC is the governing body. Is that correct?
Yes,
the
EACC
governing body.
It is, yeah. So the EACC council stands for the Economic Assistance Coordinating Council. It's a council that is put together through the Department of Business and Development under the auspices of the Department of Housing and Community Development. And they're the ones that evaluate all the applications that come before it for state investment tax credits.
If there were any kind of inconsistencies within the annual report, what would the EACC play a part in? Would it be?
So
the
original TIF agreements had, by law, each company has to provide an annual report to the state. Our TIF agreements also has the companies providing the city with quarterly reports. In the event that the companies fail to create the jobs that they are stating that they're going to create during the schedule that's contained within the TIF agreements, both the state and the city have the ability to rescind the actual local TIF that was granted to the company, and the state has the ability to rescind. That's why the reporting of this is very important to both the state and the city.
Just in general, when the subject of TIFs come up, it becomes a hot topic sometimes.
Yes.
And I've expressed in past meetings that I don't personally have a problem with TIFs based on the fact that it gives companies and it leaves Fall River competitive. Companies that have jobs, companies that are going to bring some business to Fall River may want to go elsewhere if they feel like they can get a better deal somewhere else. So I think the TIFs keep Fall River competitive regarding jobs. So that's part of the reason why every time you're around, I'm always asking you questions about the TIFs, because I really feel like getting the jobs here is primary importance. So with that, I yield. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. Anything further for Mr. Fiola? Hearing none. Do we have thank you, Mr. Fiola, very much. And
Thank you.
Motion to approve?
motion to adopt has already been made and seconded. Any further discussion on the motion to adopt? Hearing none, roll call on adoption of the amendments. After reading, Madam Clerk, if you could actually just read them for the record, because I jumped down a little too early.
This would be the TIF agreement for Hutchins Holding LLC on Innovation Way, Lot 1, and the TIF agreement for C Fox Holding LLC on Airport Road. And is this motion to adopt, would this be adopting both amendments?
Yes.
Yes, Mr. President.
Okay,
Motion to adopt A and B has been made and seconded. Hearing no further discussion, roll call.
on adoption, Councilors Kadim,
Councilor Kadim, unmute yourself.
Yes.
Dion,
Yes.
Kilby,
Yes.
Lullaby LeBeau,
Yes.
Lee,
Yes.
Peckham,
Yes.
Pelletier,
Yes.
Pereira,
Yes.
and President Ponti.
Yes.
The communication from the Traffic Commission suggesting amendments to the ordinances.
Motion to refer to the ordinance committee.
Motion to refer to ordinance has been made by Councilor Pereira. Is there a seconded by
Second.
Councilor Peckham? Roll call.
On referral, Councilors Kadim,
Yes, sorry.
that's okay. Dion,
Yes.
Kilby,
Yes.
Lullaby LeBeau,
Yes.
Lee,
Yes.
Peckham,
Yes.
Pelletier,
Yes.
Pereira,
Yes.
President Ponti.
Yes.
We have the communication from the Community Preservation Committee regarding appointments to their commission.
A motion to approve appointments?
Well, hang tight on this. So just so the council's aware, this specific item came before us. I asked the Preservation Committee because their department sent us over a number of names. I asked for them to, possibly vet and then suggest a couple names over to us. We have before us 4 individuals that is here. We only can appoint 2 and need to appoint 2. I'm making the suggestion that it be referred to a subcommittee perhaps for vetting, so it's not vetted amongst the whole council. That was my suggestion. I don't know how the council wants to do it. It's up to you. I think, maybe in economic development, tourism, it's, even though it's community preservation or youth and elder affairs, like something in those areas where they can have an opportunity, they could vet the 4 and make a suggestion of 2 names to the full council. That's what I would prefer to do. Just from my standpoint, I don't know if the council wants to, at this point, pick out of the 4 names. I like person. I know other councils like another person. I don't want to get into that. I want to, try to promote these young individuals to be a part of boards, and I don't want them to be disenfranchised either. So,
Point of clarification, Mr. President, may I ask you a question?
Sure.
All right, so there's 4 applicants for 2 positions.
yes.
There's 4 applicants for 2 positions. I don't know who they are. I read, the resumes in the packet. So your suggestion is to refer it to tourism or economic development and tourism?
Yeah.
And who actually makes these appointments? I'm sorry. If you could
Yep.
talk about- The mayor makes some, I think you make some, or whatever,
No, it's a council appointment. We get 2 appointments for this, 2 council appointments.
Oh, okay. So it's up to the city council to make the appointments. So, yeah, I think that's a good idea to refer it to economic development and tourism. And I make that motion.
Motion to refer the item to economic development. and
Can
tourism.
Can I say something before?
Sure, Councilor Pereira.
What I had done in the past when these positions came up was give all the councils the opportunity, like we have, we all have the names, we all have the agendas we can call. And then the council votes. When we voted, we went to the city clerk, we gave her 2 names. She added them up and we knew, and it was a whole council decision, not the decision of 3 members or anything like that. Everybody looks at them all, and then you pick your top 2. And the city clerk will then give it to the council president. The next meeting, you'll know what 2 you have. I mean, we're not gonna vet for everything else. And are there positions on the historic commission? Because some of these individuals wouldn't mind being on historical either. You know, either or. So I think that would be good. I would just say that it should be a vote of the council. If the council gets a pick, you have a vote. You're gonna go to a subcommittee with 3 people that are gonna make the decision for 9.
So if
Well,
you want to refer this, Councilor, if I may, for a quick
I
second.
still have the floor, Mr. President, I think. So I think it's going to be vented in the subcommittee, and then they're going to come with recommendations. And
I mean,
I trust my colleagues who they're going to pick. It's actually a very, very important committee. So I have no problem with it going going through an interview process. Whether we want to go another committee, you want to put it in front of finance or whatever. I don't know if that's necessary, but I would like to see.
If I may, Councilor, I mean, I understand Councilor Pereira's position, and I understand yours and mine, I guess. But if you want to refer it to finance and allow the council 2 weeks to call all the individuals, the 4 individuals, we can certainly do that. But I was trying to put this in economic development.
I think a motion, if I put a motion forward to refer to economic development and tourism, and if I get a second, that takes precedent, then we have a vote.
Right.
And that'll end this argument.
Right, there's a motion that has been made by Councilor Kilby prior, and once again, is there a second to his motion?
Second.
Seconded by Councilor Peckham. Is there a discussion to refer to economic development and tourism? Hearing no further discussion on the motion to refer, roll call.
Councilors Kadim,
Yes.
Dion,
Yes.
Kilby,
Yes.
Lullaby LeBeau,
Yes.
Lee,
No.
Peckham,
Yes.
Pelletier,
Yes.
Pereira,
No,
President Ponti.
Yes.
The motion carries, Mr. President. The Committee on Human Services, Housing, Youth, and Elder Affairs, at a meeting held on December 22nd, voted 3 yeas to recommend the accompanying resolution be granted leave to withdraw. This was the resolution regarding the stocking of epinephrine to to facilitate emergency treatment in Fall River schools.
Motion to adopt the committee's report.
Motion to adopt the committee's report, which is grant leave to withdraw, has been made by Councilor Kilby,
Second.
seconded by Councilor Peckham. Is there a discussion? Roll call.
Councilors Kadim,
Yes.
Dion,
Yes.
Kilby,
Yes.
Lullaby LeBeau,
Yes.
Lee,
Yes.
Peckham,
Yes.
Pelletier,
Yes.
Pereira,
yes,
and President Ponti.
Yes.
The Committee on Human Services, Housing, Youth, and Elder Affairs, at a meeting held on December 22nd, voted 3 yeas to recommend the accompanying resolution be granted leave to withdraw. This resolution relates to preservation of affordable housing and prevention of displacement at Riverview Towers.
Is there a motion to give the item leave to withdraw?
Motion to give the item leave to withdraw.
Motion to give the item leave to withdraw has been made by Councilor Peckham, seconded
Second.
by Councilor Pelletier. Roll call.
Councilors Kadim,
Yes.
Dion,
Yes.
Kilby,
Yes.
Lullaby LeBeau,
Yes.
Yes.
Peckham,
Yes.
Pelletier,
Yes.
Pereira,
Yes.
And President Ponti.
Yes.
Whereas on November 2nd, 2020, Massachusetts Governor Charles D. Baker issued COVID-19 Order Number 54, a revised order further regulating gatherings in the Commonwealth. And whereas COVID-19 Order Number 54 establishes a time limitation where all gatherings, no matter the size or location, must end and participants must disperse by 9:30 p.m., limiting businesses and citizen activity in the city of Fall River. And whereas many citizens and businesses are enduring significant financial hardships directly related to the COVID-19 restriction policy, and whereas COVID-19 restrictions have had a direct negative effect on city revenue, jeopardizing funding for public safety and education, now therefore be it resolved that the City Council Committee on Finance convene to determine an appropriate response to the governor's COVID-19 Order Number 54, requesting the retraction of the order and advocate for the balance of financial preservation and public health safety measures.
Is there a motion to adopt the resolution?
Motion leave to withdraw.
Motion
Second.
given and leave to withdraw, seconded by Councilor Kilby. Unfortunately, that will result in no discussion. Roll call.
Councilors Kadim,
Unmute, Sean.
Sorry, no.
Leon,
Yes.
Kilby,
Yes.
Lullaby LeBeau,
No.
Lee,
No.
Peckham,
No.
Pelletier.
No.
Pereira,
Yes.
and President Ponti.
No.
The motion fails.
Okay,
Is there a motion?
make a motion.
Motion to adopt the resolution?
Motion to adopt the resolution has been made by Councilor Kilby. Is there a second? Seconded by Councilor Lee. Discussion, one of the sponsors of the resolution, Councilor Lee.
Okay, first of all, I just want to say, I know that this was given leave to, this was shot down basically a couple of months ago. And I'll even admit to myself that the resolution itself that I pretty much wrote word for word is pretty ambitious. And I get that and I understand that. And please understand that most of you already know that in June last year, I had COVID and it was a really tough time for me physically and everything. So I don't downplay in any way, shape or form COVID-19 and its effect on the entire world, basically, including our community. 267 reported dead, 14 reported dead today from our administrator's office. And I don't want this resolution to fall into the trap of me thinking that COVID-19 is fake news or anything like that at all, because I know very much so that this is a very serious thing that we all have to take seriously. However, I took exception to many of the laws and changes that came down from the governor's office. And I think that there's a time for us to say something about it. And I'm not exactly sure what the city council can say as a body. I appreciate the fact that you allowed me to write my letter to the mayor, to the governor and approve that letter on file. However, I think, we all can't ignore that some of these things that came down the line negatively affected us, and it didn't really help the COVID situation. It didn't make us safer regarding COVID. And I think that there's a way that we can balance the financial troubles that we're going through with the right policies and still practice and emphasize public safety at the same time. There are a lot of businesses in Fall River, and I'll cap this off, Council President. There's a lot of businesses in Fall River that are trying to follow the protocols, that are trying to set a positive example. And I believe that these laws that are coming down the line are hurting them, even though it's unnecessarily happening. So with that, I felt as though this gives us an opportunity as a body, if we choose to make a response to these orders that are coming down. And I understand if some of you don't want that, that's perfectly fine. But I figured this was an opportunity for us to have a voice in this. And I think the community, and especially the business community, needs to hear from the city council on this. With that, I yield. Thank you.
Thank you. Another sponsor of the resolution, Councilor Peckham.
I thank you, Councilor President, and thank you, Council Lee, for co-sponsoring. I get a ton of questions. I visit a lot of restaurants in the city, and I see the decline in some of the numbers. Obviously, I don't even know what they're down to now, capacity-wise. It changed again, but they are doing their due diligence. These restaurants, the bar rooms, and all these other businesses that are being affected, they're doing their due diligence to try to keep their patrons safe. What I want out of this is what the 9:30 curfew, the numbers. Now, it's okay to say that you can't be open past 9:30, but why? Why can't we be? Why isn't there an explanation to the restrictions that were put into place? Who's recommending them? How does it make us safer? My father just got off quarantine today. He had it. I just found out I got another family member tonight that has it. I also am not downplaying COVID, but unfortunately, the numbers are going up and the businesses are still suffering. There's no end in sight. Thank God we do now have vaccines. I was reading before the meeting that Massachusetts, a few select towns and cities, and I believe we're one of them, will receive X amount of vaccines at CVS. Hopefully that can get us out of this. I also want to echo what Council Lee said. I would like to find a middle ground where we keep everybody safe, but we're not burying our businesses at the same time. Because if we keep this going, that's what's going to happen. I've already seen quite a few businesses in the city that have gone under due to COVID. I was told of one today on South Main Street that can't keep his doors open because he can't make the money. It's $5,000 a month to stay closed. With that, I yield.
Thank you, Councilor Kilby.
Yes, just one final comment on this one. I know it was given a leaf to withdraw before, but I think we all have to understand that this is not a local Fall River decision. This is a statewide decision made by the governor that we have to comply with. Then we also have federal mandates by the CDC that we have to follow. So this is not and that's why, I don't think I ever made a leave to withdraw on the part of any resolution since all the years I've been in office. So and I'll be frank with you personally. I'll tell you, my brother had it, his wife had it, my daughter had it, her boyfriend had it. I ran into a gentleman today who was in a hospital for 2 weeks. So this is a public health crisis. And I'm very compassionate to the businesses and everything else. But I'll tell you, it's not, again, I'll use that word jurisdiction. It's not within our jurisdiction. We have to follow the guidelines that are dictated by the governor of Massachusetts and what he articulates. So that's one of the reasons why I said no, because I feel that we're going to defeat this virus. It's going to take some time. We're going through a tough winter. There's no doubt about it. I appreciate my colleagues' interest in this in terms of businesses and the like. But I yield. That's really all to say. I yield. Thank you, Mr.
Councilor Kadim.
Thank you, Mr. President. So I'm going to follow suit with Councilor Kilby. I didn't want to vote to grant leave to withdraw. I know it seems like we're not always on the same page, but on this one we're on the same page. And the only reason I say that is because I think he articulated, his a good sentiment about a public health crisis. And I guess my question and the reason let me go back. The reason I didn't vote grant leave to withdraw is because I want to give Councilor Lee the opportunity, to speak on this on this resolution. And my only, I guess, hang up here is that, the 9:30 curfew, I know while it impacts some businesses, I don't know that it really necessarily impacts a whole lot of businesses in the city of Fall River, because just, when we leave the city council meetings, at 9 o'clock, I can't find a place to go eat dinner, right? And so it's always a struggle to say which kitchens are open, right? So I don't know, outside of maybe some bars that are serving just pure alcohol. I think a lot of the places, Chinese places, Chinese restaurants included, are closed, with the exception of maybe like, an Applebee's or a Chili's or something like that. I mean, I think all the local mom and pop locations close at 9 o'clock. So when I think about it that way, I think if places were open until 11 o'clock, then I guess I'd be more willing to consider this resolution, because now you're striking a balance of people's livelihoods and how we're impacting it. I just don't know that it really does it. I think lives are more important at this point, and not that I agree with all of the guidelines and recommendations that have come down from the Baker administrations. I think they're well intended, and I think they're trying to do things in a situation where it's not putting too much of a burden on businesses and individuals themselves. Like I think he's really tried to make sure that he wasn't doing a complete shutdown again, right? Because he knows the significant impacts both at the state and local levels. So just because of that, that's the reason I'm going to vote no for it. But I do appreciate Council Lee and Peckham's resolution moving forward to make sure that we do consider local businesses and the impacts that are there. I yield.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Councilor Pereira, please.
Well, I'm going to tell you how I feel about this. The purpose of this resolution, I'd like to know what the purpose is, because to send this to the governor to tell him what we think, I'm not in the medical profession whatsoever. And I don't think that any of my colleagues have anything to do with medical knowledge. I mean, when you look at the fact that today's numbers that came out, 10,393 positive cases in Fall River, 396 deaths in Fall River. When you talk about restaurants and businesses being hurt, we get that. And as a council, we've reduced, right? We've reduced, we've allowed for outdoor dining. People had been able to use city property, sidewalks, to put their wares. The mayor and this council voted to cut the licenses for businesses. We just spoke about that earlier today. And if you think that the governor doesn't want to balance finances, he does. Don't you think the governor would want as many places to be open? Because you would get a lot of meals tax coming in. You'd get that. And I think a lot of the people in the city that I speak to that know businesses are suffering, they're ordering out occasionally to try to help these businesses. And I think the city has done whatever we can do. And if you look at the governor's pandemic team, the pandemic team has doctors from Boston hospitals, world-renowned medical facility in Boston. People come from all over the world to go to our Boston hospitals. Those doctors know, the CDC knows. I get it. Nobody likes being shut down the way we are. I'd love to have all these kids back in school. I think it's affecting them. But do we look at money or life? Life or money? I mean, we get it, and we have tried to help everybody. I just don't think us meeting and discussing anything in finance and sending anything to the governor is going to make a difference. He's not going to listen and change something because we're saying, and it's going to look like we don't want to work together with the Commonwealth. And, I hopefully with the stimulus money that's coming down, with the new president coming in tomorrow, maybe things will get better, things will change. The vaccines, BCC is doing testing. They're going to be distributing vaccines. Walmart, CVS, Kmart, whatever. They're spreading them out as many places as they can. And when people get vaccinated, things will be able to free up again. The first time I gave it leave to withdraw because I didn't want to have to say what I felt. Just, it's some of my younger colleagues who are trying to make a difference and trying to put, something like this together, but it's really not gonna, it's impossible to do. And I've been in your shoes and I've done the same thing, written the same resolutions that aren't gonna go anywhere. So some of what we've done, we've all done together as a council, is to help business, to give outdoor dining, to cut some of the license fees that we pay. We've tried to help them. And I know all of you order takeout too from our local businesses to try to help them. But my vote on this would still be leave to withdraw rather than voting it no down. But I guess Council Kadim, voted the way he did so that you would have an opportunity to speak on it. I've been in your shoes and I put in resolutions that really aren't going to go anywhere. I've done it too, but you want your voice to be heard. And I think that the city has heard your voice, so the both of you that co-sponsor this, that you're concerned with business. And that I can appreciate. With that, I yield. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Councilor Dion.
Yeah, I just want to say that I agree with the sentiment. I think we're all on board with what's wanting the best for people. Counselor in seat 8 really touched on a lot of the points that I was going to touch on. So I think at this point, the most important thing is on a local level, whatever we can do to help and enhance these businesses. And Counselor in seat 8 mentioned the outdoor dining. You know, maybe we should be getting a jump on it, talking about that again now, what these people need to do. Can they be ready to roll as soon as the weather is permitting to keep up, you know, so their businesses can prosper as much as possible. And I think that's where our concentration should be, because she's right. We can't affect everything. We can't change everything, but I think we can make an impact at the local level. With that, I yield.
Thank you, Council Vice President.
So I agree with the sentiment of it as well. And I also agree with Councilor Peckham, who has questions on why certain things were done the way they were, why 9:30. And we hear those questions from people all the time. I don't believe that we have the ability to change that. It is coming from the state. And I think that resolutions such as the one that Councilor Lee put in with, I believe it was Councilor Pelletier and Councilor Kadim about giving back the liquor license fees is something that we should be looking at instead of this, or putting our time towards instead of this, so that we can do something impactful again. And the other piece that I really would be concerned about is that we would be, you know, having this conversation. And I know that restaurants have put all of these protocols in place. I still go out to eat. I still do all those things. Not that I'm downplaying COVID at all, but I still do go out. I think that it would look very hypocritical of this council when we have put all these protocols in place in our own chambers to be taking a vote like this over a Zoom meeting. So we're not willing to go into council chambers, but then we're going to send a letter to the governor saying, hey, we want our restaurants to be open later. It's the opposite of what we're doing. So I think that our time is, I voted not to give this leave to withdraw because I wanted you both to be able to speak. And we should allow councilors to speak when they have a resolution in. But I think our time would be better putting in more effort towards resolutions like, getting back the 25% to the liquor licenses. And we had this, and it's not just the restaurants, there's all kinds of businesses that are affected. And if we can find a way to help more of them, that would be, Councilor Dion just touched on it, making sure that they're all up to speed when we are able to open. So, what are other towns? There were other cities and towns, many other cities and towns that did much better job than we did when they were closed down. If you look at Providence as an example, they closed down the streets. They had outdoor dining up on a street. They were able to utilize much more space than we were here. So what can we do to make sure that they're up and running? And I think we could just look at towns that are did it better when they closed down to see what their plans are. And again, it goes to the fact that we don't have a city administrator. To me, that's the person that would be, holding all of these pieces together with the different departments. Councilor Pereira had a economic development meeting back after restaurants were closed down to talk about the permitting process. And we had all these different department heads at the meeting, but they were all doing different things in all the different departments. Councilor Pereira remembers we had licensing, we had the building inspector, they all had different forms, nothing was uniform. And then there was multiple cities and towns around us that already had everything up and going, and it was all cohesive, and they were miles ahead of us. So I think we need to make sure that we're not miles behind again. With that, I yield.
Thank you. Before I acknowledge everybody else who has spoken, Councilor Pelletier, you want to speak on this at all, or you good?
All set. I go out to eat once in a while. I'm careful, and I understand the intent with my colleague, and we got to do the right thing for the people as well. So I yield.
Thank you. I just want to point out one thing. I want to commend our colleagues because what I think here, Councilor Lee and Peckham are trying to accomplish with this is for us to have a voice and really trying to stick up for some of the businesses that have been affected. I want to underscore the point, though, that your work, both Councilor Lee and Peckham's work, was really geared towards your resolution on the liquor licenses being reduced. It was your resolution and it was your work collectively, as well as a couple of other councilors to get that started. So I appreciate the work that you both have done from that perspective. And I don't want you to think or the community to think that the council hasn't done what they can do within their power to help small businesses, because we have. And you two really shepherded that process. So, you know, I had a different approach with this. I would have been all right with maybe having a conversation, because maybe to convene to determine an appropriate response. Maybe there wasn't an appropriate response after a meeting. Maybe newer things would have came of that. I didn't want to discount that, but I can count, and I see that maybe that really isn't the priority here. I would encourage other counselors, or both Councilor Lee and Peckham, to maybe, you know, file something else down the road when this starts to change. But I just want to, I guess, let the record reflect that this council has done their very best under trying circumstances, and each of you individually and as a body, we have really done the best that we possibly could do to try to help businesses in this trying time with what we could do. So I don't want to discount that, and I want to recognize you both for your efforts. Councilor Kilby.
Yes, really quick. You read my mind in terms of your comments. So in support of my two colleagues that put this resolution in, hopefully I have the ability maybe to ask them to amend and have the Director of Public Health come down to a Committee on Finance to discuss the rollout of the vaccine in the city of Fall River, and to give us an update on her opinion when eventually we're going to have some alleviation on the impact that this has been done on businesses. I don't think I can repeat that, but
So you have,
my two friends.
you have a motion on the
I
floor,
hope they
Councilor.
would,
You have a
they would
motion.
amend that.
You have an amendment to the resolution to adopt and add to the resolution that we invite the Board of Health Director to come before the Committee on Finance to discuss vaccine rollouts and any other impacts or lack thereof that would impact local businesses. Is that what it is?
Yes, sir. Yes, Mr. President.
Council President,
Councilor Lee?
is the Committee on Finance the appropriate one for that?
I would probably say Health and Environmental Affairs would probably be.
That's what I was thinking too. That's what I was thinking too.
So I amend my amendment to send it there.
Health and Environmental Affairs. So there's an amendment made by Councilor Kilby to refer this resolution
Second.
to the Health and Environmental Affairs Committee for them to also invite the Board of Health Directors so that they can discuss vaccine rollouts in ways that we could or could not help area businesses. That's an amendment that has been made by Councilor Kilby, seconded by Councilor Lee. Is there discussion?
I have a.
Councilor.
This is in coordination with the previous discussion. To everyone, first of all, thank you for passing at least a conversation across. And you know, one of the commercial mottos of the Air Force is to aim high, right? That's what we all know. You know, we've seen those commercials for years. And I think sometimes when you aim high for something, where you land sometimes is better than not shooting at all. And I feel like the way that Council President described it, this resolution in its original form probably wasn't, you know, going to fully pass, but I think it starts a conversation and it gets us somewhere, because I think it motivated me to write the resolution that was agreed upon by Councilor Kadim and Councilor Pelletier for that 25%. I think that sparked the conversation now to try to get conversation about the vaccine. So I think that, you know, granted, I'm a young counselor and this, that, and the other and all that, and I know about jurisdiction and I understand all that too. But I think that we as a body have a lot more ability, a lot more that we can we can do. And sometimes all it requires is a little conversation and bringing some things to the floor and hashing it out. And yeah, and maybe what I write all the time or what another counselor writes all the time isn't perfect, but if we work on it, we can get something productive out of some of these things. So with that, I yield. Thank you.
Councilor Peckham.
I think it's great that we had the conversation regardless of what the outcome is. The city of Fall River does have, and I understand the governor does, he sent down an order, he is the governor, but the city can still question the Commonwealth. When I have constituents asking me, why did they shut down at 9:30? Why did they do this? Why is it? I don't have any answers. And that's all I'm looking for. And I appreciate Council Vice President for bringing that up. There's restrictions. I want to know why, and it's pretty simple. That's why I agreed to co-sponsor the resolution with Council Lee, is because I had questions that I couldn't answer for my constituents. And again, as a city within the Commonwealth, we have every right to ask questions. With that, I yield. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Councilor Pereira.
Well, one of the things that I'd like to add is 4 years ago, not with this recent pandemic, but 4 years ago, I put in a resolution that businesses could have outdoor dining. They would have had outdoor dining already for 4 years. And now this year, I brought it up again, the outdoor dining because of the pandemic, et cetera, to start working on that. And it's true. In Fall River, they think of 10 reasons of why something can't be done rather than 10 reasons of how to get it done. You know, we can't go into the street, you're taking up a parking place or this or that. There are other places to park. And I think that we need to look at what we're going to do come the summer. We even said that they could go, I always said from May 30th, from Memorial Day to Labor Day, would be a good span, or even to November 1st, if the weather's good. Another thing that the city did for businesses was to supply them with outdoor heaters that we gave to them. There was a grant that was filed and we obtained a number of outdoor heaters. I think there's still some available and everybody got those. So if you want to do something, it's not only for the short term now that businesses are hurting, but what can we do to make it better? I don't think that resolution should go to, health and environmental. I think it should be changed to filing a resolution to look at what are the vaccine protocols and filing that to that committee. Because there's nothing in this resolution that talks about vaccine. So I don't know if you want to take a 5-minute break and write that up with the help of the clerk, put something like that in. There's nothing in there that talks about vaccines.
We just made a amendment. We're voting on an amendment made by Councilor Kilby, seconded by Councilor Lee, that say that we're going to refer it to, make an amendment to the resolution and refer it to the Committee on Health and Environmental Affairs and invite the Board of Health Director to discuss vaccine rollouts and any other impacts to businesses. So it is the amendment that is before us.
I think vaccine impacts the entire community, not just the business community, but to all of the people that live in Fall River want to know about these vaccines and how these shots are given and where the vaccine shots are going to be given and what the protocol is for the different phases. So I think that's worth a discussion. With that, I yield. Thank you.
Thank you. On the referral, any further discussion? Roll call.
On the referral and the amendment, Counselor?
Actually, it's the amendment first. Let's vote on the amendment first. Yeah.
Counselors Kadim,
Yes.
Dion,
Yes.
Kilby,
Yes.
La Liberty LeBeau,
Yes.
Lee,
Yes.
Peckham,
Yes.
Pelletier,
Yes.
Pereira,
Yes.
and President Ponti.
Yes.
I'm gonna.
Motion to adopt as amended.
Second, motion so made?
Motion to
Second.
adopt as amended has been made by Councilor Kilby, seconded by Councilor Peckham. Discussion? Roll call.
On adoption as amended, Counselors Kadim,
Yes.
Dion,
Yes.
Kilby,
Yes.
La Liberty LeBeau,
Yes.
Lee,
Yes.
Peckham,
Yes.
Pelletier,
Yes.
Pereira,
Yes.
and President Ponti.
Yes.
We have a citation for Sharon Dahlstrom for her decades of service to the Board of Election Commissioners.
Motion to approve citation?
Second,
Motion to adopt the citation has been made by Councilor Kilby, seconded by Councilor Dion. I just want to make a moment to thank her. I know she's watching the meeting tonight for her tremendous work and efforts throughout the years in your service to the Florida Board of Elections. So on behalf of the council, the community, I want to just say thank you to Sharon for your work and for your efforts. Motion to adopt has been made. Hearing no further discussion, roll call.
On adoption, Councilors Kadim,
Yes.
Dion,
yes,
Kilby,
Yes.
La Liberty LeBeau,
Yes.
Lee,
Yes.
Peckham,
Yes.
Pelletier,
yes,
Pereira,
yes,
and President Ponti.
Yes.
And we have a citation for Kobe Paiva for his outstanding hard work collecting personal care items for the homeless.
motion to adopt.
Motion to adopt has been made by Councilor Pereira. Is there a seconded by Councilor Peckham? Once again, thank you, Kobe, for your service and your help to the community. Motion has been made to adopt motion has been made to adopt. Hearing no further discussion, roll call.
Gosh, Mr. President, I
I'm
have to-
sorry, Councilor Pereira.
this is a young child, a young person, Colby. And I think, we often have negatives to say about youth. And I think that this is an outstanding youth to come up with this idea and do what he did. So I certainly applaud him and think this is a well-deserved citation. With that, I yield.
Thank you very much. Hearing no, Councilor Peckham.
I brought up the citation. The mayor had actually given one as well. I thought it would be great for the city council to recognize him and to touch upon what Council Pereira said. I don't know if anybody knows the background to him wanting to do this, but the story I read is heartwarming. He was learning about the meaning of Thanksgiving and then found out that not everybody around him had as much to be thankful for as he did. And then he found out that there was homeless people that went without deodorant. So he, a 6-year-old boy, took it upon himself to, I think it was 2,500 some odd toiletries, got together and helped out the homeless. If we can get more kids like this, our city in 20 years will be unbelievable if everybody's like this kid. Colby, thank you on behalf of the city. We appreciate it. With that, I yield.
Thank you. Any further? Hearing none. Motion to adopt, roll call.
On adoption, Councilors Kadim,
Yes.
Dion,
yes,
Kilby,
Yes.
La Liberty LeBeau,
Yes.
Lee,
Yes.
Peckham,
Yes.
Pelletier,
yes,
Pereira,
Yes,
and President Ponti.
Yes.
Have the order for Cumberland Farms for the removal of 230 feet of curbing at Brayton Avenue.
The motion to adopt.
motion to adopt.
Motion to adopt has been made by Councilor
Second.
Pereira, seconded by Councilor Dion. Discussion. Roll call.
Adoption, Councilors Kadim,
Yes.
Dion,
yes,
Yes.
Kilby, La Liberty LeBeau,
Yes.
Lee,
Yes.
Peckham,
Yes.
Pelletier,
yes,
Pereira,
Yes,
and President Ponti.
Yes.
We have the request on behalf of BCBBL LLC for the removal of curbing on Duval and Turner Streets.
Motion to adopt.
motion to adopt.
Motion to adopt has been made by Councilor Pereira, seconded by Councilor Kilby. Discussion. Hearing none. Roll call.
On adoption, Councilors Kadim,
Yes.
Dion,
yes,
Kilby,
Yes.
La Liberty LeBeau,
Yes.
Lee,
Yes.
Peckham,
Yes.
Pelletier,
yes,
Pereira,
Yes,
President Ponti.
Yes.
And we have the order for Daniel Walsh for the removal of curbing at 9 Riverview Street.
motion to adopt.
Motion to adopt has been made by Councilor Pereira,
Second.
seconded by Councilor Dion. Discussion. Hearing none. Roll call.
On adoption, Councilors Kadim,
Yes.
Dion,
yes,
Kilby,
Yes.
La Liberty LeBeau,
Yes.
Lee,
Yes.
Peckham,
Yes.
Pelletier,
yes,
Pereira,
Yes,
and President Ponti.
Yes.
We have the police chief's report.
Motion to adopt, place on file.
Motion to adopt the police chief's report has been made by Councilor Peckham, seconded by Councilor Dion. Discussion? Roll call.
On adoption, Councilors Kadim,
Yes.
Dion,
Yes.
Kilby,
Yes.
Lullaby LeBeau,
Yes.
Lee,
Yes.
Peckham,
Yes.
Pelletier,
Yes.
Pereira,
yes,
and President Ponti.
Yes.
We have renewal of auto repair shop licenses.
Motion to adopt the auto repair shop license renewals has been made by Councilor Kilby. Is there a second? Seconded by Councilor Peckham. Discussion? Roll call.
On adoption, Councilors Kadim,
Yes.
Dion,
Yes.
Kilby,
Yes.
Lullaby LeBeau,
Yes.
Lee,
Yes.
Peckham,
Yes.
Pelletier,
Yes.
Pereira,
yes,
President Ponti.
Yes.
Item 19 is the renewal of an auto body shop license.
Adopt.
To
Second.
adopt has been made by Councilor Dion, seconded by Councilor Peckham. Discussion? Hearing none. Roll call.
On adoption, Councilors Kadim,
Yes.
Dion,
Yes.
Kilby,
Yes.
Lullaby LeBeau,
Yes.
Lee,
Yes.
Peckham,
Yes.
Pelletier,
Yes.
Pereira,
yes,
and President Ponti.
Yes.
We have the city council's schedule of meetings for the 2021.
motion to adopt,
Motion to adopt has been made by
Second.
Councilor Pereira, seconded by Councilor Dion. Discussion? Hearing none. Roll call.
On adoption, Councilors Kadim,
Yes.
Dion,
Yes.
Kilby,
Yes.
Lullaby LeBeau,
Yes.
Lee,
Yes.
Peckham,
Yes.
Pelletier,
Yes.
Pereira,
yes,
and President Ponti.
Yes, Madam Clerk, could you please send everybody that in a separate email tomorrow so everybody can update their calendars?
Yes.
Thank you so much.
No problem. We have a number of claims.
Corporation Council.
Motion to refer to Corporation Council has been made by Councilor Pelletier,
Second.
seconded by Councilor Peckham. Discussion? Roll call.
On referral to Corporation Council, Councilors Kadim,
Yes.
Dion,
Yes.
Kilby,
Yes.
Lullaby LeBeau,
Yes.
Lee,
Yes.
Peckham,
Yes.
Pelletier,
Yes.
Pereira,
yes,
and President Ponti.
Yes, is there a motion to take items?
Motion to take 22 through 28 together.
Motion to take
Second.
items 22 through 28 together has been made by Councilor Peckham, seconded by Councilor Dion after reading. Discussion? Hearing none. All those, roll call.
So this would be to take items 22 through 28 together. Councilors Kadim,
Yes.
Dion,
Yes.
Kilby,
Yes.
Lullaby LeBeau,
Yes.
Lee,
Yes.
Peckham,
Yes.
Pelletier,
Yes.
Pereira,
yes,
and President Ponti.
Yes, motion to approve would be appropriate after.
Motion to approve.
Motion to approve has been made by Councilor Dion,
Second.
seconded by Councilor Peckham. Discussion? Roll call.
This would be approval of minutes for public hearings held on November 17th and December 1st. Committee on Finance of November 17th and December 1st. Regular meetings of the City Council from November 17th and December 1st, and the special meeting of the City Council on January 5th. This is for approval. Councilors Kadim,
Yes.
Dion,
Yes.
Kilby,
Yes.
Lullaby LeBeau,
Yes.
Lee,
Yes.
Peckham,
Yes.
Pelletier,
Yes.
Pereira,
yes,
and President Ponti.
Yes.
Item 29 is a thank you card from a constituent.
Motion to accept and place on file would be appropriate.
Motion to accept and place on file.
This is from the Ingerall family, just so everybody's aware. Motion to accept and place on file has been made by Councilor Peckham, seconded by
Second.
Councilor Dion. Discussion? Hearing none. Roll call.
On accepting and placement on file, Councilors Kadim,
Yes.
Dion,
Yes.
Kilby,
Yes.
Lullaby LeBeau,
Yes.
Lee,
Yes.
Peckham,
Yes.
Pelletier,
Yes.
Pereira,
yes,
and President Ponti.
Yes.
Item number 30 is a communication from the Law Office of Nicholas Gomes regarding host community agreements.
Motion to refer to Corporation Council?
Motion to refer to Corporation Council has been made by Councilor Kilby. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Councilor Peckham. Discussion, Councilor Pereira.
Yeah, I don't know if many of you have had the opportunity to reach out to Attorney Gomes. I did. I emailed him. Apparently, he wants to, along with two other individuals, he wants to open up a marijuana facility in Fall River. Claims to have all the licenses that he needs, but a little different is this facility. This facility would be a facility where you call in your order and somebody drives it to your house. I asked him if he had any, because he lives in Fairhaven and the other two partners are in New Bedford. Asked if they had anything with New Bedford, if they had tried to get a host agreement there. But my concern is if we're going to start getting letters like this from people, what is the limit on licenses? Are we having no limit? Is there no zoning of where these types of facilities can go? I really think you need to stop looking at that. I hear there's going to be another one going where the old McGovern's was, way down on South Main Street. I mean, is that an area where you want traffic? Is there off-street parking? The way that this was handled by the former administration, it was dismal to say the least, and I don't know where we're at on this. So I think that Corporation Council should take a look at this. I mean, I have some people who say let as many as you want come in because we're going to make money from whatever monies they make, and other people just don't want any more in the city. So I think this is a discussion that we need to have. So I'm glad that it's going to Corporation Council, but I'd like to hear back from him on what his thoughts are on this and what the thoughts are in zoning. I think we need to look at zoning this. With that, I yield.
Thank you, Councilor Dion.
Yeah, I agree with the zoning issue. That was one of the biggest problems and why we have as many problems as we do, because zoning was not addressed prior to the dispensaries being allowed to come into the city. So I think definitely before anything is approved, that there should be a discussion and action on zoning. My second thought is the establishments that are here pay a 3% impact fee. Would that be required with this type of facility where people aren't going to the facility, they're delivering to the people? So would that fall into the same category? And if not, how is that going to impact the impact fee that we're receiving now? You know, is that going to reduce that revenue for the city? Will it enhance the revenue? So that's another discussion I'd like to have in terms of these delivery service facilities. With that, I yield.
Thank you, Council Vice President.
Yes, thank you. To Council Pereira, I was having this discussion today. At the end of the last term, prior to the end of the last term, I had had conversations with our former city planner about zoning. He had done a lot of work in Fairhaven on all of their zoning regarding marijuana establishments. And I'd asked him where we were at here for the city. And he had indicated at that time that unfortunately his hands were tied by the administration on what he could or couldn't suggest. I had put in a resolution prior to the end of last term, specifically for the council to ask for him to do that, the city planner, so that it would be a formal request of the council, and he could fall back on that as he was, just fulfilling this request. I followed up not too long ago with Bill Kinney and Corporation Council as to where that was at, and they both indicated in their reply that that wasn't anything that was passed off to them in the changing of leadership or department heads, but they would both look into it. Madam Clerk, could you please reach out to them and ask them where they are at on that resolution and the follow-up email? I believe you were copied on that email as well. If not, I can forward it.
Okay.
You yield.
I yield, yes. Sorry.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, motion to refer to Corporation Council has been made and seconded. Roll call.
On referral, Councilors Kadim,
Yes.
Dion,
Yes.
Kilby,
Yes.
Lullaby LeBeau,
Yes.
Lee,
Yes.
Peckham,
Yes.
Pelletier,
Yes.
Pereira,
Yes,
and President Ponti.
Yes.
We have a request for a street opening for pavement less than 5 years at 140 Manchester Street.
I have a question here.
Councilor Pereira, your question?
Yeah, I have a question. The engineering division has received a request for a road opening to install water and sewer. But it doesn't say where the request came from. And this is something that we have been talking about over and over again. If somebody gets a building permit on property that the street is less than 5 years old, why are they giving it to them? And then it comes here for us to vote on it. So they usually send these down for us to vote on it after a house has been built or, you know, a complex has been built. I mean, are they, it's like the right hand doesn't know what the left hand's doing. If it
Motion
is,
to refer to Public Works and Transportation for venting.
Motion to refer to Public Works and Transportation. I'll let Councilor Pereira finish, but there's a motion to refer to Public Works and Transportation has been made by Councilor Kilby. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Councilor Lee. Councilor Pereira, you can continue.
well, I just think that there needs to be something done. Every time we get a request for a street opening, you know, I mean, if it's an emergency, I understand. But if it's not an emergency and the street was done, what residents hate to see is their street being paved, and a couple of years after it's done, people are coming and ripping it up. So if you want to refer it to Public Works and Transportation, that's fine. I mean, let's just see if we can coordinate these departments together. If the variance board knows, if you're giving somebody a variance to build something or to put on, you know, in-law apartment into their home or what have you, and it's not 5 years, at least let people know. So, I mean, it could be a discussion for Public Works and Transportation. With that, I yield. Thank you.
Thank you. Anything further?
Yeah, really quick, Mr. President. Yeah, sometimes it makes sense to have these things vented before a committee. I don't know if there was any, I don't think we're getting any objections on this, but you know, I don't want to overburden that committee, but sometimes, you know, these things need to be discussed because as Councilor Gadim said many times, I mean, our streets are appalling, you know, and so it's almost like sometimes automatic in terms of venting these things. So I yield. Thank you.
Any further discussion on referring it to the Public Works and Transportation for vetting? Hearing none. Roll call.
Sean owes me lunch.
On referral, Councilors Kadim,
Yes.
Leon,
Yes.
Kilby,
Yes.
Lullaby LeBeau,
Yes.
Lee,
Yes.
Peckham,
Yes.
Pelletier,
Yes.
Pereira,
Yes.
President Ponti.
Yes.
And lastly, we have a communication from the ad hoc committee to review subdivisions. This is a proposed letter to Representative Carol Fiola.
I'd like to recognize Council Vice President, if you can kind of give us a brief on this. You took the lead, and I want to commend you with this in our Representative Fiola on this. So I want to commend you for your leadership efforts here. But if you could just give the community and maybe the council just a brief synopsis of what is going to be happening. And I know there were some tight timelines here as well that you had to adhere to. So if you can.
So at a council meeting, I want to say it was maybe in August, late summer, there was a motion made on the floor by Councilor Kadim to asking you to put together an ad hoc committee on subdivisions. And I can't remember what street was in front of us at the time. I know that we tabled it, but it was streets that were coming in front of us to be accepted because subdivisions were left unfinished by builders over and over in the community. They would open up a new LLC, go in front of, you know, planning, get a new permit, build a new subdivision, and leave it unfinished. So that was the main reason that the motion was made on the floor. So you had named the members of the ad hoc committee. We were able to meet today. I've been in touch with Rep. Fiola, as well as Councilor Kadim for over a year on this, since I had first gone out to Whitefield Street. And besides their their issues of flooding, that street was also left unfinished, and the city is finishing it now. So what happens is the city then ends up having to pay for it because a developer has left it, and whatever surety that they have given the city is usually not nearly enough to cover the expense of the city. So unfortunately, a lot of this is through mass general laws. So what Councilor Kadim and I had done a while back was go through the mass general laws in reference to subdivisions and just propose some changes to the wording. You all have a copy of it now. Councilor Dion and I in the meeting today wanted to get just a little further input on a few of them. However, these are just suggestions. Representative Fiola will then be sending this to their legal counsel, and then it would go as a proposed amendment to current mass general laws. I know, Council President, you had talked about at one time doing a home rule petition. However, a home rule petition would only affect Fall River, and these are issues that are statewide. And the sentiment at the time was we should be in the forefront of making proposing changes at the state level that would benefit everybody. We're not the only communities that had issues with this. And besides that, besides the subdivision laws, which deal with so what I'm looking for, pre-site plans, pre-plans to come in front of them. There are a couple of changes to subdivision laws, but I think especially for Fall River, the other under other considerations for us would be that the LLCs. So if they could delegate more authority to communities, we're currently not allowed to deny a project for an LLC, even though we know who the builder is, and we know that the builder had previous LLCs, and we know that we're currently finishing their work around the city. We're not allowed to deny them based on that, because all the LLCs are separate entities.
Thank you for that brief synopsis. Is there a motion to approve?
Motion approved.
Motion to approve
Second.
by Councilor Kilby, seconded by Councilor Peckham. Discussion, Councilor Pereira.
Yeah, I've got to tell you, I heard about putting together an ad hoc committee back, I want to say maybe June or July. I thought that it was going to come back to us with a bit more information before anything like this was done. I think that all of these changes are changes that should be done through the ordinance committee, because that's the committee we had. If we're going to put together another committee, and I put together two committees since I've been on this council, the Commission on Disabilities and the Health and Human Services Committee, and it came back and it got a vote. I don't know how this ad hoc is. I would have to ask the clerk about that. But to be honest, I didn't find out about this meeting that was going to be held until early afternoon today. And I had an appointment at 2, so I was delayed on getting on board and listening to the meeting. And then I received an email around 5:30 with the packet that I haven't had a chance to read. Through the president to the clerk, has this ever been done before with an ad hoc committee? Should this have not gone to ordinance or vetted it there? What you've been around a long time.
I don't know that the council has formally created an ad hoc committee necessarily. Of course, this is something that can be discussed in the ordinance committee. I think this was just put together as a working group. My impression was that it was going to come to the council for a vote, and should the council wish to have further discussion, then it would refer the matter to the ordinance committee or to whatever committee is appropriate, or just discuss on the floor of the council, whatever the will of the council is.
I mean, and then I thought it was going to be 3 people, and there was 2, Councilor LeBeau and Councilor Dion at the meeting. And I think that this should go to the ordinance committee and have corporation counsel there. Corporation counsel should take a look at it and then let it go to the state if that's eventually where it's going to go. I don't know that we can change LLCs that somebody does and then they go bankrupt, and I don't know that we can prohibit them. But I really believe that some of what's in this, that I haven't read the whole thing, I'll be honest. But some of what I read, some of these changes could be made in Fall River and would benefit us. This came about when we were talking about Whitefield and Frederick, et cetera. And it was felt like, well, we can't do anything now, those homes are built. And I'm from the thought that whoever signed off on all of these building permits, you had to have conservation, water, sewer, building department, planner. Why the heck did they sign off knowing that was wetland? Who signed off on this? I mean, I think that an investigation should be made at that. Because if people were forced to sign off, then that's wrong. That's clearly wrong because it impacted a lot of other people. But I would make a motion that this go to the ordinance committee first. With that, I yield.
Thank you. I
That's
just
my
want-
motion. That it be referred to ordinance.
No problem. I'll entertain that motion or refer. I just want everybody to know that the ordinance committee does not have any kind of ability at all whatsoever to change Mass General law. We have to do that through cooperation with any of our state reps. I believe through seeing some communication with our council vice president, who I'm going to ask to speak on this now, there was a time period by which Representative Fiola had. So by the time that the ordinance committee met, scheduled a meeting, did it, I believe the cutoff may have been, is very shortly. I don't even think the committee had time. Council Vice President, if you can.
Yes, so I'm just going to repeat that sentiment. The ordinance committee does not have the ability to change Mass General law, so I wouldn't advise sending it there. And there is a time limit from Rep. Fiola. She had asked originally that she had any proposed changes by last Friday, and then it was bumped out another week. And we have been, Council President and I, who is the third member of the committee, just wasn't available today, worked with the clerks to schedule a meeting sooner and to also include Corporation Council and our city planner. However, they weren't available, and nor was a Zoom meeting. The Zoom schedule, when we started talking about this at the beginning of January, was booked up through the end of the month because for reasons unknown, the city has one Zoom account. So everybody can't get on a meeting at the same time, which is why we ended up with an afternoon at 2 o'clock meeting. And the city clerks sent out that agenda last Thursday. They had to have it public so that we could meet today at 2. So we had a number of obstacles to go through. We can certainly hash it out any way that the council seems fit. If we are to do that, we will miss Representative Fiola's deadline to send it to their legal counsel. But again, we can't do anything in ordinance.
On the, you yield, Council Vice President?
I yield, thank you.
Your Councilor Kilby.
Yeah, just one quick comment. I agree in terms of, we can't alter state law. However, let's put our cards on the table here. The reason why we have all these shady developments is because we've had administrations that have allowed them to go forward due to political contributions. That is the truth. Okay, that's the honest truth. That is the reason. We have to focus on enforcing the laws that we have on the books. And we have to make sure that the mayor's office is not for sale. And we have to make sure that these developments get their proper, again, venting. Roads and infrastructures are put in, sewers put in. It's not going to be built on wetlands. And we're not going to have these developers plow through neighborhoods without efficiently taking care of what they should be doing. So that I think that is the issue here. That's the issue. So we're not. I don't think we're about to amend any state law or whatever. It's just about our planning department and our administration, whoever the mayor is, to not to have undue influence on our planning board, but to do what's right, because people get hurt later. So I yield.
Thank you. Councilor Lee.
The way I'm seeing it, there's there's definite loopholes or there's definite ways to address this from the state level, but there's also ways to address this on a local level too. I mean, we should have some safeguards in place on a local level. If we know that there's an owner that can easily just drop the LLC and do the shenanigans all over again. But where's the harm? I don't see the harm in trying to fight the battle on both fronts. I think what, Council Vice President's trying to do and the ad hoc committee is trying to do is equally as valuable as what we can do on the local level here. I think we have to evaluate the process. I like the addition of the site plan review. I think that's a helpful element to this on a local level. But if there's more tightening up that we can do to vet and vent the situation, then we should be able to do that. We should be able to try and do that on a local level, but I wouldn't deter any efforts at all from seeing how we can tighten it up on a state level too. With that, I yield.
Thank you, Councilor. Just for a point of information, so everybody's aware, our local ordinances will not be able to supersede any kind of state law. So just so everybody's aware. Councilor Pelletier.
I think that the Vice President done a good job on this. He worked hard. The Fall River problem now, yes, it is, but it's a state problem as well. I mean, it's not only Fall River. You got these guys that are shady. And if the work that she done, I only read a couple of pages on it because I got a call that she was on TV today, but they gave me a copy of what went on. I think it's a good idea. Let it go up. I hope Rep. Fiola is not going to miss the deadline. Stick it in there and see what happens. And you want to send something to the ordinance committee, so be it. But it's a state thing. And if it's happening here, it's happening all over the place. And she's the leader on this. And I'm proud of her. I think she's done a good job. And I think she's going to hear something about this. And some of the other towns are going to follow up with the state. Hey, this is wrong. It's got to be done right. So I give her a lot of credit on that. With that, I yield.
Mr. President.
Councilor Kadim.
Oh, thank you. My video's not working for some strange reason. So I just wanted to just jump in. I think if anybody had read any of the recommended changes coming out of the ad hoc committee, which I believe the ad hoc committee was approved a couple of months ago when we discussed this in council. All those changes that are coming through as recommendations by the ad hoc committee cannot be made at all on the ordinance. And I don't disagree with Councilor Lee. I think we should be attacking it on both fronts. I think some of the issue is the lack of accountability from past administrations and the pay to play, if you will, for developers. But in order to really address it, we need to make the changes at the state level with Massachusetts general law and subdivision control laws. And none of that can be done in ordinance. We can send this to ordinance, we can talk about it, but it's going to be a resolution, as Councilor Pereira had said, filing a resolution that's not going to do anything. If we want to get something done, we should be sending this over to Representative Fiola, have her submit that to legal counsel at the state level, let them try to push forward some changes with Massachusetts general law. Now, if folks want to file a resolution and start looking at our zoning bylaws and see how we can amend our zoning bylaws to make things a little bit more stringent and put a little bit more teeth behind certain items, then I wholeheartedly agree with that. But that being said, the changes that are before us now cannot be done in ordinance. So I think Councilor Lee has a great point. We should be attacking this from two different fronts, one front at the state level, one front coming from ordinance committee. But I think what we really need to do, at least from an ordinance committee standpoint, is reviewing all of our zoning ordinances. I think a full out review of the ordinances should be coming to the city council. I will say that, Bill Kenny, when he was here before us, he made it sound like there were no changes that needed to be made. And it wasn't until I jumped in and disagreed that there are significant changes that need to be made that he agreed with it. So, I don't know how much help we're going to get from the administration, but I think we should start looking at it from an ordinance standpoint as well and reviewing our zoning ordinance. I yield.
Thank you, Councilor Dion.
Yeah, part of our discussion today, and something that is addressed in here is these developers that form LLCs. They don't fulfill their obligations. They don't fulfill their commitments. We have drainage issues. We have roads that aren't complete. They file bankruptcy, walk away. We're left holding the bag. People who purchase these properties are seriously impacted. They open up under a new LLC or form a new LLC, and they do it over and over and over again. And on the local level, there is nothing we can do about that unless Mass General Law changes and allows us to not allow somebody who has done that to form another LLC and do it again. You know, we're trying to affect change that if a developer goes in and does that, like Whitefield Street, files bankruptcy and tries to form another LLC, they can't do business in Fall River because they messed up the first time. And that's what part of this is addressing. And I think that, you know, the changes are significant. You know, will we ultimately get the result we're looking for? I don't know. But I think we have many people within the state, not just Fall River, who need change. And very often it's also it impacts daily life. It impacts neighborhoods. It impacts, you know, people's bottom lines. And I just think that, you know, if we can affect change at the top and at the state level, we can affect a lot of change locally. If they don't feel that this is worth pursuing, then we can do it through another process and just get as much done as we can. But I would rather, like Councilor Lee said a few minutes ago, you shoot for the. Perhaps that is what we're doing. With that, I yield.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, Councilor Peckham, do you want to speak?
Yeah, just very briefly. Council Vice President, I think you did a great job. I read some of the first couple of pages today that was sent over. Shooting for the stars, or the Air Force motto that Council Lee used earlier. We talk about Whitefield Street and all these issues at every meeting. So it's about time we have Rep. Fiola's ear. She's going to forward it, help us with these issues. Why not just pass it along? Why keep it in the city? Give it to Rep. Fiola, let her run with the ball and see if we can come to a resolution to this problem already. Again, Whitefield's not the only street. We talk about many of these streets at every meeting. So let's hand it to Rep. Fiola and let her do her job, because we know she's very capable of doing so. And we'll go from there. With that, I yield. Thank you.
Council Vice President.
Yeah, so I just wanted to speak as far as the LLCs, the reason that they're allowed to do that and the reason they have no problem doing that. And one thing that's addressed in these proposed changes to the current law are the sureties. Right now, there's 3 types of sureties that a developer can give: cash, bond, or parcel of land. Most of our developers will do a parcel of land, but it's usually it's usually a piece of land that can't even be developed, which does the city absolutely no good. So they have no problem leaving their development unfinished, and the city is left with a piece of land that we can't do anything with, which certainly doesn't begin to cover the cost of the work that the city ends up doing to fix it. So, you know, these are just really just common sense changes. The other one is there's currently a 21-day, a planning board only has 21 days to review a plan. However, most planning boards, ours included, they meet once a month. So if they don't meet, if they don't have the ability to meet or call a special meeting to review that plan, a non-action, a lack of action is considered an approval. So it's automatically approved. So unless you know, why wouldn't you change that to 30 days? Or Councilor Dion and I had a conversation or maybe 30 days, or at the next regularly scheduled meeting of the planning board, so that we don't have approvals being given by lack of action because the planning board hasn't had their regularly scheduled meeting yet. They're just pretty basic common sense changes. The other thing that we asked for was, hold on. where they would
Preliminary
put in,
plans,
what's that?
preliminary plans and a what?
Yes, so that, thank you. I was trying to find the word.
I knew you were looking for that.
You knew that I was looking for that. Right now, if they don't have to give preliminary plans, one, developers spend an awful lot of money on their final plans, and by that time, there's been no input. The planning board and the abutters haven't had a chance to bring up any issues that they might have, to have changes made to the plan. And why wouldn't everybody want that? A city should want that so they can address issues ahead of time, and a developer should want that because why would they want to go through the expense of full plans if an issue can be found, for infrastructure or public services that could be found ahead of time? So we're not asking for crazy changes in any way, shape, or form. We're asking for common sense changes that protect the city, our city specifically, to stop some of these things. Maybe we wouldn't have an issue with limited liability companies if they gave a proper surety, and they wouldn't want to leave their money on the table or their project not finished and move on to the next, because now it would cost them something. So, I'm happy to answer any other questions on it. But that's pretty much the basics of the changes. I know it's a lot of wording on here, but they're pretty basic changes.
Thank you.
I don't-
All
I
right,
don't-
Madam Clerk, can you remind me what the motion is before us, please? I forgot.
Motion is to approve the draft that was submitted by the ad hoc committee.
That is the motion on the table that's been made and seconded, correct?
Second.
Yeah, that's been made and seconded. Council Pereira?
Yeah, I mean, some of these things on here, and I've got to be honest with you, I haven't read all 6 pages because I didn't get it till very late. So, and I didn't hear the meeting because I didn't know we were having one. I had problems with my computer, so I didn't get emails. But when I talked to other colleagues, they didn't know that this meeting was going to go on. And as far as the state goes, you can't go less than what the state has on their ordinances, but it doesn't say on their laws, but it doesn't stop you from going to increasing it to more. You want to send this to Rep. Viola and see where it goes. And there is a deadline. I know that the deadline is the 19th, and she'd like to get it 2 weeks before so that she can submit it. And it'll go in to the pile of bills that everybody puts in. And of the 400 bills, so many will get picked to be pushed along further. Though I don't have a problem with it going there. I've got to be really honest with you guys. I don't like the way this meeting was held. I don't like the way this was done. There was no input from any of the other counselors. And honestly, that's upsetting to me. Do I think that something needs to be done? Yes. And on February the 25th of last year, I put in a resolution to look at site plan review, which has a lot to do with these types of things. And that is yet to come before the ordinance committee. We had a letter regarding boards and commissions, why some get paid, some don't. I put that in January 14th. Law department, I don't know where it is now in the law department. You put things in and you don't get a resolution to it. You want to put this in to Rep. Viola? Well, let's put it in. To be honest with you, I really would like to object on this because I feel very uncomfortable voting to send this when I haven't had the opportunity to read the whole thing. But if everybody else has read it, I'll read it. And if there's something that I have a question of, I will talk to Rep. Viola about it because this has to go to the legal counsel up there first. But I don't like that we didn't know about the meeting. And I will admit, I wasn't getting the mass emails that were coming from the city. I didn't get them till late, but there was nothing in the packet. When I started to watch the meeting, I called the city council office to ask them to forward me what it was that Councilor LeBeau was looking at. What was she reading from? Send me that. I want to see it. They said, oh, she never gave it to us. We don't have it. So I didn't even know.
Sorry, excuse me, Council President, point of information. Council Pereira, I thought you said earlier that you didn't watch the meeting. You watched the meeting?
I watched it at 2:30. I only got on late because I had a 2:00 appointment. So I only got to watch
This
it late.
information was sent to the city clerks, the council secretaries over the weekend. So they absolutely have. it. Yes.
The draft,
Yes,
the draft that you had was sent to them?
yes. And I sent it to the other 2 committee members. So look,
I don't have it. Madam Clerk,
It went to the committee
You have
members. Council Pereira, are you not on the ad hoc committee? I said
but
it to the.
when you were
committee.
talking about it at 2:30, I called and asked Kat if she had whatever it was you were reading from, because then I could at least read along and understand what was going on.
Yes, they absolutely. have.
Nevertheless, I'll vote for it, let it go to Rep. Viola. I just don't like the way it went down. I'm going to be honest with you. With that, I yield, Mr. President.
Well, no, I'd like clarification on that because I don't know if you're saying you don't like the way it went down. We
Well,
scheduled.
I just don't like to vote on things.
All right, listen.
I don't like to vote on things.
one
I
person-
really don't like to vote on things
Councilor
that
Pereira,
I haven't read the whole thing through. And that's where I'm coming from. I don't usually do that. That's why I asked for it. But you talk to the council clerk tomorrow and ask her. She told me she didn't have it to send me.
Council Vice President. We can
Go
recap.
Motion.
I understand Council Pereira's frustration if she was that if she didn't have it. However, these are suggestions. Anyone is welcome to follow up with Rep. Viola in the process. She's sending this to their legal, and what comes out of that, we have no control over. So anybody is welcome to send any suggestions to Rep. Viola on anything that they would like to see. So, which is, it's complained about at every meeting that comes in front of us when we have we're asked to accept streets that a developer never finished. So, some work was done. I understand it's 6 pages because it's a lot of wording. However, it's clearly outlined, and we complain about things, and here's a chance to make a difference. So
No, I agree 100%. That's why I put in to look at the site plan review, because it's the same thing. You've got a review coming in and it goes by computer, and whenever any department head has a chance to look at it, they look at it. That makes no sense to me. Everybody should come together and come out with a plan. Same thing with these developments. They should sit together so the developer knows A, B, C, what they need to do. And it's things all over the place, but that's been in there too. With that, I yield. I'm ready to vote.
I'm just going to answer Council Pereira's question on that. I had sent the clerk, the council secretary, an email last week asking them to get a list of all the items that we've sent to Corporation Council, because you're correct, he has had them for many months now. He did initially say that he was working on some lawsuits, so those were going to take precedence over what our committee had sent him. However, I did ask the clerks to do that along with dates for another meeting, because we have one Zoom account. So if there's somebody already meeting, we can't meet unless we meet during the day. With that, I yield.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, the item before us is to approve sending the letter to State Representative Viola. Hearing no further discussion, roll call.
Councilors Kadim,
Yes.
Dion,
Unmute yourself, Councilor Dion.
Sorry. Yes.
Kilby,
Yes.
Lullaby LeBeau,
Yes.
Lee,
Yes.
Peckham,
Yes.
Pelletier,
Yes.
Pereira,
Yes.
President Ponti.
Yes.
That's all we have, Mr. President.
Motion to adjourn has been made by
Motion to adjourn.
Councilor Peckham, seconded by Councilor Dion. Roll call.
On adjournment, Councilors Kadim,
Yes.
Dion,
Yes.
Kilby,
Yes.
Lullaby LeBeau,
Yes.
Lee,
Yes.
Peckham,
Yes.
Pelletier,
Yes.
Pereira,
Yes.
President Ponti.
Yes. Have a good evening, everyone.
Good
Good
evening.
night, everybody.
Night.